OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
All right, 7:30 Thursday morning. Only one place to start, and that is the annihilation of Manchester City by Real Madrid last night in a 90-second spell that broke their soul and broke their spirits. What happened? Give us your view. Hashtag OTB AM. Owen, what happened?
It's hard to know. Is it are we calling this a Pep special? I think that's probably a little bit too far.
That's the headline. Owen says Pep special.
There we go. Yeah, Kevin De Bruyne concluding the game on the bench. Is that a symptomatic of a Pep special? I wonder. Riyad Mahrez being withdrawn. Is that a Pep move?
Up to Joe. Pep Guardiola has now suffered 6 eliminations at the semi-final stage of the UEFA Champions League. 09-10, 11-12 with Barcelona. The 13-14 season, 14-15 and 15-16 with Bayern Munich. The joint most of any manager, along with... Do you know this?
I don't.
Who else has lost 6 Champions League semi-finals?
Jose Mourinho.
Jose Mourinho. Well done. Did someone give you that?
No. But who else has been in lots of Champions League positions and been
so
disappointed?
Do you therefore say it was an amazing career, you've reached this and you've also won it the other times, and you've, I think that's fine. I don't think that's final, did he? Anyway, is it what an amazing career, you have changed football? Or is it you've also been gifted the best footballer of all time, and then the control of Bayern Munich, and now all the money in the world, literally all the money in the world to build a team that is flaky as F?
That's a good question. Excuse me. So in a year's time,
are they flaky?
Well, you'd have to say yes. They conceded 2 goals that in very quick succession that can only be compared with the remontada, the Bayern Munich or the Barcelona PSG in 2017. That's the only thing that really kind of comes close to this. When it happened, it kind of felt like Spurs Ajax. We can't forget that Spurs only scored 1 late goal on that occasion. Liverpool's comeback against Barcelona was a slow run thing over the course of the second leg. This all happened in very quick succession. And I know Barcelona got 3 after the 88 minutes, wasn't it, that night against PSG?
It's the Champions League final 99, except that
Champions League final 99, exactly. Yeah, that it's.
But I wouldn't have said that that was
that Bayern Munich weren't flaky.
Well, I mean, I don't know. That Bayern Munich team has a bunch of players who win World Cups, who eventually win a Champions League.
Yeah. So, are you using the Premier League titles for Manchester City as a reason to suggest that they're not flaky?
Now, I guess what I'm saying is that the Real Madrid team are special.
Yeah.
And in the Champions League, over the last decade, they've been one of the greatest collection of players of all time. Now, it's a different team. It's not that different. I mean, sure, Ronaldo's gone, Sergio Ramos is gone, a few others are not there, but several of that team have won Champions Leagues. So for them to keep going and to score is not truly shocking. It's a little bit fluky that the deflection goes onto Rodrigo's head. That's a bit of a fluke.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a fluke that Courtois' giant leg is fully extended and the ball just brushes off the bottom of his boot and hits the post, goes wide of the post from the Grealish chance. The other Grealish chance, what? It's a bit of a fluke that they got beaten.
I'm firmly of the belief, though, that you have a greater chance of fluky things happening to you if you are flaky.
Spoken like a true Arsenal fan.
That is well, exactly, and I think maybe if I'm not sure, can we make a Mayo comparison here? We're all
Mayo's
thinking
2 own goals. No, that's unfair.
No, not the own goals. The sort of late stage getting beaten when the game is in the melting pot, sort of
against an all-time great team, though.
But
did they? Dublin aren't that great. It's just that they come up against a flaky Mayo side.
Kerry Tyrone last year, there was fluky things that happened there, and the flakier team got beaten.
Kerry are flaky?
Yeah, they were flakier than Tyrone. I apologise for using that reference, but it's one of the first things that kind of comes to mind. I do believe that there is a correlation between the fluky and the flaky, and the flaky ends up falling victim to the fluky. And yes, of course, there are multiple different alternate universes this morning where there was no problem for Manchester City, where those late chances just come and skim by the post, and that happens. But it doesn't. You can't make a case that they're not flaky after losing in the manner in which they did.
Is it Pep's fault that those chances get missed in the first leg? That the defence isn't better in the first leg when it could have been wrapped up?
Sorry, no, I don't know if it's Pest's fault or not, but that was definitely for me the reason why Manchester City aren't in the Champions League final. Like I said last week here, that the first game could have been an 8-2 situation for Manchester City, and not that it should have been, but it definitely should have been more than 4-3.
Well, it probably should have been. It was there to have your signature breakout performance where you become a truly great European team. Like, I don't know, is there something that, like, they made a Faustian pact with the devil when they took all the oil money, and that ultimately you can't get what you want? That, like, there's
so we're going to award the good guys Real Madrid with everything.
It's difficult. It's a difficult narrative to see the whole way through. But, where the plucky underdogs, as somebody said last night on Twitter, it's like our Real Madrid. Something weird has happened in the world. A lot of weird stuff has happened in football in the last decade. The money that Manchester City have pumped in has been incapable of winning the Champions League. The money that PSG have pumped in has been incapable of winning them the Champions League. There is some still modicum of justice in the world of football.
You're talking here as if this story is done. You're talking here as if, like, the money is dried up and this is the last chance. Like, Erling Haaland will probably win the Champions League for Manchester City next season.
Will he?
Like, there's every chance he does. Well, the thing is,
what happens if he comes in and he's afflicted with the disease of flakiness?
But the thing is, Manchester City, even if they'd won last night, you could still make a case that they are flaky given their past history in the Champions League. That they still wouldn't have got over
until they win it. Yeah.
Until they win it, exactly. So,
bear in mind, Manchester United were flaky in the Champions League all the way up until the 89th minute against Bayern Munich in that final, because they hadn't won it. And that's what scoreboard journalism is. It's like, oh, this team is no good until they do the thing that they... And ultimately, that's the whole point of it. We keep score because we want a winner at the end. I don't think Man United were flaky up until that point, though. I think that a weird series of things had happened to them in previous years, and they had not been able to fulfil their destiny. And then they were flaky again for a couple of years after that until they won it again. Like, is it not just that Real Madrid are a team full of absolute winners who've just won the league, who are celebrating that, who do have some of the best young players in world football, and whatever else they have in their armoury at the moment, they're doing very well with. They were definitely still going strong in extra time last night, and we shouldn't be that surprised. Like, here's the thing: no shots in 90 minutes is a big deal, right? But, like, no shots on target. But, like, they're going to have shots on target over the course of the game. Their shots on target all just happen to be in a short spell. That short spell happened to be at the end of the game. If they'd scored 2 goals in 90 seconds early in the game, and City had wrestled it back to get to extra time and then beaten extra time, would we be like, oh, flaky City? I don't know. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, probably not. And I think that there would have been a far better chance had, those goals come earlier in the game. They were just completely shell-shocked, and if it was before half-time, it would have made a world of difference if they'd gone back into the dressing room. The fact that it was extra time today to go into, I think we knew that it was only going to go one way unless it had gone to a penalty shootout. But even then, I think Real Madrid would have won a penalty shootout.
Michael O'Connell says, lads, you've been hyping the quality of the Champions League all year. It's been crap. This is a poor Madrid team. All the Spanish, German and Italian teams are weak. The Premier League has 2 good teams. That is a contrarian take the morning after the Champions League semi-finals have once again been the best sports events on the planet, as they are every year for the last number of years. No matter who's playing, weird shit happens in the Champions League semi-finals. Do you know there was like a 3 or 4 year period where the All-Ireland hurling semi-finals were, like, unbelievable?
Yeah.
Every single game was unbelievable.
18 and 19 in particular.
And it's kind of come off that peak. The Champions League keeps getting better and better and better in the semi-final stage. Better and better and better. I think
more dramatic.
And I think the final this year has the potential to be pretty dramatic. Like, you have 2 very, very good teams who are going to be going for it.
I'm very happy that this is the Champions League final matchup. I think that this is the beauty of the Champions League. You want to see teams from different countries going up against each other, and I think the great irony here is that my belief is that Real Madrid in a one-off game against Liverpool have a good chance, but actually they've probably proven over the last little while that Real Madrid over 2 legs probably have a better chance, because they, like I say, frustrate a team for a longer period of time, and then they figure their way into the game. I think this is going to be a very, very interesting Champions League final. There's no question that Manchester City on paper are a better team than Real Madrid. But I think we've seen over the last few rounds that Real Madrid just have a level competitively that a couple of other teams in and around them on paper don't have. And I think we're sometimes underplaying how good some of the players are in this Real Madrid team. Some of the younger players, what's the Rodrigo ceiling going to be over the next little while? He's only 21 years of age. I think Camavinga obviously would have gone down as a wunderkind for the last few years. Real Madrid got him, made a huge impact when he came on last night. He's probably not going to start the final because you have to start Kroos and Casemiro. But this is the quality that they have coming off their bench.
Yeah. Mark Dunning says, incredible finish to that game last night. If Real win the final, is there an argument to be made that Kroos, Modric and Casemiro midfield is better than Xavi, Busquets and Iniesta? We'll ask that to Graham Hunter a little bit later on. I suspect he's going to say no. But at the same time, the level of achievement is off the charts.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it really is. And also,
those guys know how to win the biggest games in world football again and again and again and again, and they've done it. So this isn't Villa, who have scored 2 late goals to knock Guardiola out of the Champions League semi-final. It's a world-class team who are absolutely desperate in front of their home fans, knowing that they must throw absolutely everything forward, and weird stuff happens. So, it's very tempting to say this Man City team have a very flaky core, and there's definitely some bit of dark art that they should have been able to do, that they should have learned from the games against Atletico. They had the coaching from those games against Atletico to just kill those final few minutes, and when it went to 6 minutes, instead of just going, I can't believe it's 6 minutes, what's going to happen here, they should have just cheated, and everybody would be like Phil Foden rolling back onto the pitch. He forgot to be Phil Foden rolling back onto the pitch in the last 6 minutes. So maybe that's flaky. Maybe that's the bit where it just went too much for them.
Because it did seem that night against Atletico that they had kind of learned from past mistakes, but it definitely felt that 6 minutes, there was a lot more football played in that 6 minutes of injury time last night than there was in the entirety of the last 15 in extra time.
For football's sake, neutral should hope Florentino Perez does not win the Champions League. The irony of this guy holding it aloft is a sickening thought, says Paul McGee. It's just, the irony of any of the owners holding the trophy aloft is kind of sickening, because all of them have, their own bits. Real and Ancelotti are the footballing equivalent of prime Kilkenny under Cody, says John Stapleton. Nigel Gallagher says it was the substitution that changed things. Walker having to come off, Cancelo having to move over to the right to cover Vinicius Jr. and Zinchenko found it hard to deal with Rodrigo on the left. Did Cancelo not do well defensively, but not very well with the ball? I thought that, I don't know if you remember, was it 2 games ago or was it 3 games ago when Gary Neville was basically having an orgasm about how good Cancelo was on the ball? It was like, are these guys really good, or were we rubbish? And Carr goes, I was a centre back. That was when Cancelo was kind of original Ronaldo with the ball, kind of. Didn't do any of that last night.
No, yeah, that's true. He was kind of a little bit absent from City's attacking plan when he's so important to them, and I think it possibly is in the conversation for their player of the season. So yeah, I guess maybe that kind of indicates maybe the game plan and kind of the stacked nature of the defence they were up against for a large period of the game. I'm not sure. I think a couple of them had an off night. Pep at the end just looked like he wanted to cry.
You watched the press conference. What was he like?
I was just very, very down, very, very downbeat. Giving the usual sort of platitudes about needing to pick them up for the weekend, and look, it happens. 2 late goals. He just hadn't processed it. We spoke about stages of grief a couple of weeks ago when it came to Manchester United. He is going through those stages at the moment, because this is a massive, massive hit for him.
So, is this a sliding doors moment in the history of Manchester City Football Club? Do they, as a result of this, double down and decide that they're going to collectively do this together? Is there just a bit where they're looking at Pep going, we literally hired everybody in the backroom team that you needed. We have bought everybody you wanted. We have spent $500 million on fullbacks and other players. What's going to happen here? Are you going to do this thing? You're supposed to do this thing. You had one job. You have not done their one job. Is there a little bit of a... And is he like, this place is cursed. This place is cursed. What is wrong with you people? What did you do? What did you do? Is our ground built on ancient sacred land? What happened? What did you do?
It's funny you should say that, isn't it? Didn't Yaya Toure say that there is some historic hex placed on, or Yaya Toure's agent or brother or something? Well, no, it wasn't Colo. Somebody attached to Yaya Toure said that there was an ancient hex placed on Manchester City.
All joking aside, I don't think there's a hex. I just think that they haven't got the right stuff. So, but is there any possibility that this leads to a fracture in the relationship?
I'm not sure. I think it's just like Pep is now, the boulder's at the bottom of the hill, and like Pep's looking at that again. It's just, he's probably looking at that, being like, the effort of this.
Yeah, and he's got Klopp.
This.
And Klopp is so happy, and Klopp is in the final. Klopp is always
signed a new contract.
Exactly.
He's going nowhere.
Now, so the Haaland deal is done. We're given to understand. So that maybe gives Pep a little bit of excitement. The other sliding doors moment in this is the whole, and it's important tonight, West Ham obviously need to come from behind against Frankfurt to go through to the final, and if they win tonight and they win the final, they'd be in Champions League next year, and you would expect Declan Rice will stay that 1 year and run his contract down and be able to negotiate his way out next year for a fair value. Or do they just pay the 150 million for Declan Rice? So they get this season Haaland's relatively cheap on the face of it for what you pay, the value of what you're going to have for the rest of his career. That deal could end up being 120 million after you include all the agents' fees and whatever. Do you spend all the money and get the two of them in this year and decide, right, one last opportunity for Pep to get the boulder up the hill? And Declan Rice in midfield last night was what was missing alongside Erling Haaland.
Well, they're definitely going to try something, and I think Pep's always got what he wanted really at that club, and that's one of the attractions why he went there. So if he wants Declan Rice, I think he'll get him, and I don't think Manchester City will have any qualms about it. They've made no secret about the fact that they want this one last trophy, and I suggest that they would do everything this year if Pep is saying that that's what they need. Like, it has been commented upon quite a bit that they're, not that their squad is thin, but they do rely on a core group of players in a way that maybe other teams, such as Liverpool, actually don't really rely on. That Liverpool can maybe rotate a bit more broadly than Manchester City can. Maybe Pep sees that as a bit of a weakness and something that he can improve on next season. But like, you are nitpicking when it comes to Manchester City here. It's the psychological bit as opposed to the playing bit, it seems, that is the thing that's letting them down the most, because like they are a better team than Real Madrid, it seems. They're just not a better team of winners than Real Madrid, which maybe is the whole point of a team. So I'm not sure how much of a net gain they'll actually get from those additions, which is a great irony considering Haaland's one of the best players in the world.
Well, he played better than Jesus last night, who didn't really do that much, did he?
No. Well, Jesus has been excellent over the last few weeks, and like, you would have expected him to carry that form into the next little while. Like, the big thing for Manchester City is that Casemiro really just had such a big influence on the game in terms of being, the shithouse on the pitch, and they allowed that to happen to them. I wonder, is he like looking over at Fernandinho and being like, you instead of Rodri would have done a better job? Just not a better job, but like a more effective job when you're holding that lead. Granted, his legs nowhere near the legs that Rodri has, but I don't think anybody else in that Manchester City squad has that killer mentality the way Fernandinho does.
Yeah.
Like, this is very much.
This
is such hindsight stuff from us, by the way.
Well, they've a lot of grounds for complaint about the refereeing and the lack of bookings in the first half that would have eventually led to a card or calm things down, and the shithousery would have stopped. Like, they have some righteous anger.
Yeah, no, they do, and I think that they would have been pretty annoyed with the Casemiro situation and not actually the referee not going to his book enough. But that's the hometown crowd. This is a tale as old as time. This is not a new thing. Like, people don't even get heard about this stuff anymore because it just happens all the time. Michael
Collins says Laporte was a lucky boy. He should have seen red for the slap on Modric. Bobby Dwyer says, I thought Kane had to go to City to win trophies. They could end up with 0 this season. They're going to win the league. They're going to win the league, Bobby. Don't worry. Connor Pratt says 2 goals after Walker came off. Dave Cos, is Kenny Cunningham still in the studio watching the game? He said to leave him there last night. He's actually asleep under the bench here. We don't want to wake him because he needs to get some coffee into him before he's allowed on the show. You'd have to feel sorry for Grealish, says Daisha Dude. I have seen this doing the rounds, all right. I do feel sorry for Jack Grealish as a Villa fan, I think, but this just hastens his inevitable return to Villa at a cut price 25 million deal. And take him back.
And like the rudeness of Mendy to stop his arrival at Manchester City, like, what a goal that would have been had that crossed the line. And everybody's talking about Jack Grealish as the man who seals City's path to the final.
Yeah, there is obviously an upside down emoji alongside the Grealish thing, because I think everybody got the implied no one cares about Grealish. or rice. And then there's another issue which has been raised in our YouTube comments, which we will come back to a little bit later on. But it's time for us to deal with something far more important. At 7:50 a.m, it is Thursday, the 5th of May, and we take all of your correspondence very seriously. So somebody emailed. I actually don't know what the email address is. Is it info@offtheball.com? To Off the Ball Sport. Hi, Owen. I have listened to you regularly on News Talk. You are very good and professional, but never take on board anything that comes before the word but. You are very good and professional, but there is one thing that really bugs me. Have you a problem giving the British, or English in particular, credit? This morning you used United States in a segment. Why do you use UK constantly, yet use United States? A lot of your reports are based on English posts, for example, Premier League, racing, boxing, tennis, etc. Yet you rarely say the person in question is English or is taking place in England. You nearly always say in the UK. Why can't you say the words England, English, Britain, Great Britain? Especially when you use United States repeatedly. You have a huge responsibility in the position you are. Do you not realise that younger people listening to you are influenced by your clearly biased reporting? Looking forward to your reply. Yours sincerely. That was sent on Friday the 22nd of April. And then on the 2nd of May to Off the Ball Sport. I sent you an email almost 2 weeks ago in regard to what I see as you very anti-English style of reporting. I appreciate you are busy. I am busy. I took the time to write an email about something I felt strongly about. I'm not naive enough to think you will change your ways because of my email. However, I would expect the decency and basic manners of a reply. I am now going to email the head of sport in News Talk and also make a complaint to News Talk about your disgusting actions. And the third one there was...
Okay, so I've prepared an official statement in response to this. It's Sheehan. It's spelled Sheahan, not Sheehan. Thank you.
OTB AM.
Right, to the big European action last night. Graham Hunter, good morning to you. How are you?
Oh, no. Stop right there. Why is it, now that Owen's finally been outed, no mention of the anti-Scottish stuff? Again, nothing. If you're taking time to put a magnifying glass in his behaviour, just go the full way. That's all I'm asking, even-handedness.
Owen is pro-Glasgow, pro-Edinburgh, but for some reason he just doesn't like Aberdeen.
There's my point. There's my
something about it rubbed him up the wrong way. Didn't like the weather.
Team's beginning with A. How can we start like this after a night like that?
I don't know what happened last night. We're trying to establish, is there flakiness or is it just that, like, because certainly a lot of the reaction was, typical City, this is, look at Pep. But actually, Real Madrid are a team full of absolute winners who are cutthroat, who are just coming off the back of a league title where they've really cantered to the league and not gotten that much credit for it because of the difficulties at Atletico and Barca. And, you know, many of those players have 3 or 4 Champions League medals. So should we really be that surprised that they're able to dig something out when they're at home, when everything's on the line? Like, I realise it's shocking that it happens in such a short space of time, but are we too inclined to blame than give credit?
I don't know. I think analytical, but your blame, I think, is for your social media viewers. The larger part of the people you're referring to were off the pitch by the time the game turned round. So Real Madrid are full of hard-bitten, characterful serial winners. But Kroos and Modric and Casemiro, you know, were gone by the time the turnaround happened. And the ones you're talking about would be Courtois, who's saved from Grealish, is astonishing. Absolutely. I'm not quite sure how he manages to get a stud to it and why that stud is enough to divert the ball. And Benzema, you know, people talk about a slightly quiet game during the bulk of it. That cutback on the touchline for Rodrigo to dart in, for a guy who's playing through pain, for a guy of his age, to be not only that athletic and gymnastic, but to direct the ball in the only place where Rodrigo could get to it, I thought was astonishing. To convert the penalty again, having come into this tie with a record of missing 3 of his previous 5 penalties, makes Benzema. I cannot believe that there'll be a different Ballon d'Or winner when it's awarded. It has to be him. But the reason I said blame when you mentioned the word needs to be taken away when we took a scalpel to this game to examine it. At the beginning of the season, I heard you, Bobby emailed into you or wrote into you about Kane needing to go to City win trophies. That needs a little bit more looking at. At the beginning of the season, or in the summer, pardon me, who did City try to buy? Not just Harry Kane. They knew they needed a goal scorer. They knew they needed a 9. They went for him. They went all in. Daniel Levy said no, they couldn't get him. The reason that I think in November I had a little punt on Liverpool to win the title was I couldn't believe that if a series of football brains as impressive as there are around City said we need Harry Kane, I couldn't believe that their season would not show a lack of that player, not necessarily him, but an outright goal scorer. And if you sum up this whole tie, which my arithmetic isn't very good, but it was 290 minutes plus a 30 minutes. What does that make? Does that make 210? No, 220? 210 minutes. Madrid were behind for 179 of the 210 minutes. And in the first leg now, for a knockout semi-final tie, if you only analyse based on last night, I think it's a mistake. And City should have had a 3-goal margin from the home leg. And we kind of just tucked that away after that game, going onward to the Bernabeu. And I admit that having seen the way Real Madrid defended in Europe against Paris Saint-Germain in the vast majority of the 2 games, and then Chelsea in the second leg, and for little spells at Stamford Bridge, I expected City to win. I can't deny that. I did expect going into the game that City would have the players to keep the ball well, that they would defend better than Real Madrid, and that they would probably win 2-1. That was my idea, and therefore we tucked away and forgot a little bit about the fact that they blew this tie at home.
They definitely did blow it at home, right? They also then appear to have been able to blow it in the last 15 minutes of normal time. But and this is going to sound a bit weird, but the first 15 minutes of the second half seemed to give Real Madrid a lot more courage about what the potential outcome was going to be, even though they didn't manage to score in that time. There was like a reservoir at the end of the game where they're like, hang on, we created a lot of chances earlier, we just didn't hit the target with them, which maybe gave them the comfort to keep going. So, like, there's a million different moments, as there are in any 210-minute game, that you can point to that ends up on a knife edge like that last night. Is there a trend beyond the lack of a goal scorer? Because they scored loads of goals. Is there a trend in that over those 2 legs that Manchester City have that suggests that this is still short of being a Champions League winning team, that there's something still wrong in the makeup of the team or in what they're trying to do?
That's such a gigantic question that for once in our 20-something year friendship, I'm going to be a little bit tentative. For my taste, when you play Pep Guardiola football, you need to be exceptional at it, absolute exceptional. I think it's a slight high wire act that it has less capacity to go wrong or have an off night or have mistakes than other more robust, more basic styles of football, in my opinion. I think it's extremely, it's whether you appreciate it or like it or don't, it's quite high art. It's quite complicated. And I think that your players are drilled in a way of acting and way of thinking, which isn't about, we're in this, we're street fighting, we're going to be at the way in which these players are drilled for each of the clubs he's coached. I'm not solely talking about Manchester City now. And my point of reference, I saw more Barcelona football under Pep than I did Bayern Munich and City. I would have seen more Pep Guardiola time than when he was in Bayern Munich. And I interviewed a lot of interviewed players at Bayern Munich under him and at City under him. I got to know the Barcelona players under him much more. And they talked a lot about needing to be 1-0 up. They talked a lot about how, they could struggle if they didn't go ahead. And they felt fear. They felt mortal. They just played in a different way. And for my taste, City, when they're a team of extremes, if they feel fit mentally and physically, there are very few teams that can cope with them and keep up with them, keep up with their movements, keep up with their decision making. And it was movement a week ago that completely undid Madrid. I thought that City were able to dart into spaces that Real Madrid were bewildered by, couldn't keep up with. And yet there was a complete change of energy. Real Madrid I don't know how to explain the fact that if you're talking about City's culture there, Real Madrid's culture, we now would be wrong to say it rests in Kroos and Modric and Casemiro and Courtois and Benzema, because it was Camavinga and Rodrigo, extremely young, not brought up in the Real Madrid culture, who did extraordinary things in added time.
Well, this is interesting, right? Because I actually had to Google some of the players on the bench last night for City. The unused players were two goalkeepers. Scott Carson's still one of them. Zach Steffen, who we obviously most recently saw have that howler. Nathan Ake, everybody knows him. But then it's Conrad Egan-Riley, it's Cole Palmer, it's James McAtee, and Romeo Lavia. I hadn't heard of Lavia. He's a Belgian. None of those players are of the standard of Champions League semi-final, second leg. I'm going to look at my bench and I'm going to bring them on. Now, the players that he did bring on, obviously, Sterling and Grealish, Gundogan, Fernandinho and Zinchenko. So it's not like the bench didn't have 5 players that he could use, but it feels a little bit like the squad is not as developed as you might think for the billion they've spent.
I think it's a handy thing to say. I think Cole Palmer looks as if he's going to be extraordinary. Your point is about last night. You know, Madrid didn't use their entire bench either, and I think that it's more about what happened from those who came on.
Yeah, exactly. But it's that they went and they got Vinicius and they got Rodrigo and that, like, for all of the ills and the wanton waste of money that Real Madrid have had in recent seasons, they have also tried to buy the best. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm...
No, Ger. Listen, but you made 2 points there. Listen, you looked at City's bench and you had a slightly critical eye when you put a magnifying glass on those that didn't come off the bench. First of all, they didn't come off the bench. You know, so I don't think that's why City went out. Secondly, you're right that Madrid have had... They were extremely articulate about it, or Florentino Perez was, when they were signing Vinicius and Rodrigo. What they didn't say was it was caused by pain. It's Newton's law of every action and equal and opposite reaction. When Neymar went to Barcelona, he had been due to go to Real Madrid. Real Madrid absolutely 100% believed they'd signed him. The pain and the humiliation for Florentino Perez of Sandro Rosé saying to Neymar, come on over here, the water's lovely, and Neymar going, yes. And there might have been some financial incentives involved in it. Who knows? Football's strange. And Florentino said to his scouting staff, Juni Calafat particularly, get me the next 3 or 4 Neymars. We'll stick it up them. There are very few things in life, not mind football, that are more of a motivation than being humiliated and saying we're coming back from this. So they went out and they said, find us the Brazilians. Now for Renier, who's at Borussia Dortmund, the experiment failed. But for Vinicius and Rodrigo, they've bought 2 young, very extraordinary men, very characterful men, who have a tendency to score or make huge goals. And in the meantime, Florentino Perez said, we cannot compete with the state clubs unless we buy the world's best young players before anybody else sees them. So it's been an outright policy, and it's been a policy to buttress the 800 million they've spent in the stadium. So the stadium looked quite nice last night, and I think the stadium hosted a small element of why Real Madrid won, because the fans, although there are small smatterings of fans, I can't promise it was Real Madrid fans. There's brilliant footage in this country today of stuff that's a little bit like Istanbul, with people just outside the Bernabeu scattering and trying to run back in as the first Rodrigo goal goes in. But the majority of the fans not only didn't leave, they believed. It's just it's an hypnotic condition. But how it gets past to the youngers, I'm not quite sure, because you can tell them. But what we experience over our careers is we see that the absolute fire that we witness in great sportsmen and women usually is not part of a club culture. The club culture fosters it, grows it, but it has to be in them to begin with. They have to be made of the right stuff. How do you scout that? I don't know. I genuinely don't know. But the youngers have got it at Real Madrid, and City lost to a club last night that over the coming years, that arena they were playing in, I mean, imminently, it won't be a football arena. It's an events arena with the pitch sunken down and taken away underneath the Paseo Castellano, so that it's going to be, rock concerts, it's going to be conferences, it's going to be exhibitions, and they're going to make money hand over fist. And finally, instead of just buying the world's best youngsters, they'll be back to buying the world's Galacticos again. We're entering a Real Madrid era, although, in my honest opinion, I'll say it now and I'll defend it later, they're not going to beat Liverpool in Paris.
Before we move on to that, just if I could do some like amateur psychoanalysis on Pep and dig a little bit deeper into this. Like when you talk about the first leg being the leg where Manchester City essentially lose this, like Pep afterwards was very, very positive, like really saying, we've beaten one of the best teams in the world, very, very happy, like kind of reminiscent of that very famous Pep interview where he's like, I'm more happy than you believe, when the reporter asks, why aren't you so happy, that there's always this sort of sense from Pep, not always, but often a sense from Pep trying to put forward a more positive sense of things than you really believe they are inside his own head. And you get why he does that. You get why he wants to send out that message. But I wonder, did that message seep into his own consciousness and into the consciousness of the team, that they were further ahead in this tie than they really were in between the two games?
So now we're only dealing in opinions, and I'm trying to get in the head of somebody as complex as Pep Guardiola is. He's like trying to do one of these Rubik's Cubes blindfolded.
Yeah.
I think largely we'll be urinating into the wind. But knowing him, I would say my answer. Somebody's got urine on their trousers on, and it's one of us, and it's the anti-English one. Look, the thing I would sorry about going back to that. The thing I would say about knowing him is no. The players are wholly accustomed to Pep's idiosyncrasies and what he says to the cameras, with whom he has a hate relationship most of the time. He's not what he's saying to them, and I don't think either the players or Pep were in any way shaped by what he said to the public after that game. They live and breathe. For example, again, when Pep ever talks about his brand of football information, he only ever says it's about winning, not entertaining, not being cleverer than another coach. It's about winning. And he says, why does he want to have the ball, possess the ball, and press the ball? He said, well, the further the ball is away from our own goal, the happier I'll be. He said, I'm a much more defensive coach than people give me credit for. I don't want to let in goals. He came out of that game, I will guarantee you, disgusted that they didn't score 8, and almost as disgusted that they let in 3. And that's the way that the players will have approached this second leg. And let's be frank. I think if we try and claw a City narrative out of what happened in the couple of minutes when Rodrigo scored twice, my opinion is we'll probably be making a mistake, because the first goal, genuinely, you can say who was moving with Rodrigo. I accept that. The first goal was utterly extraordinary. Benzema's action in that first goal should live in our brains like forever. The analysis of why City didn't go through will pale and peter out over the coming weeks. What Benzema did ranks, up there with stuff that we saw when we were kids and we still remember with a glow. That's my honest opinion. I think we saw utter and complete brilliance.
Here is one that I just want to read you. Incredible finish to that game last night. If Real win the final, is there an argument to be made that the Kroos, Modric, Casemiro midfield is better than Xavi, Busquets, Iniesta?
I suppose if you're locked away in a high security prison, you've nothing better to do. Yeah, that's fine. Man. I love it. I love it when this comes up. It's it's a really easy way to waste a good interview opportunity.
You should. Oh, I wonder what Kroos and Modric and Casemiro would say at this stage.
Oh, they would probably say, who cares? When my experience of, again, a male and female sport is that when you get players of such elite ability, do you think that if you had the fortune of having Casemiro, Kroos and Modric on the show, they would go, yeah, they were pants. They were wildly overrated. That Xavi could barely play. And Iniesta, it went on off his shin in the World Cup final. No. Do they have different elements to them? Yes, they do. Are there deep similarities between Casemiro and Busquets in their relationship with yellow and red cards. Yeah, I think there are a lot of similarities. But I mean, how would you, on what comparison points would you start to tick off the yeses and nos between Cruz and Xavi, or Cruz and Iniesta? I think it's a nonsensical idea. Let's just, from my taste, there are a vast array of differences: height, physique, style of playing. But if you talk about achievement and character, then from my personal taste, it's like you pay your money, you take your choice. If somebody wants to say, I prefer the attitude and mentality and style of playing of Cruz, Modric and Casemiro, I'll salute that flag. Fair play. Go on, enjoy yourself. Better than, well, that's just pants, isn't it?
Yeah, and look, it's a reductive way of talking about these, but that trio, I think, is definitely going to go down in footballing history.
For sure.
Although the fact that, as you pointed out, they're off the field last night is one of those little caveats that we'll need to remember. If they go on ahead and somehow manage to overturn Liverpool in the final, then we can come back to that. So I guess to just reframe this again, let's not just analyse the minute, let's analyse the two ties, and let's remember that Man City were chronically in need, they thought, of an out-and-out number 9. Is there, this is again speculation, is there a point where Pep has had enough of this, or is the singular desire to win the Champions League with Manchester City going to come to define him, and this is his white whale and he sticks at it like Ferguson stuck at it until he eventually got there?
First of all, I think he's quite happy at City. I think that the idea of him being utterly obsessed by the Champions League, that diminishes a little bit in that, what have they been? I forget the year before the final. So they're now finalists, semi-finalists. Were they semi-finalists, finalists, semi-finalists? I think a couple of seasons ago. Listen, I'm reaching. I think that when you are near but you don't do it, I don't think the obsession absolutely grows exponentially. I think if you're analytical like Pep, you know that you're a little bit of luck or an outstanding performance from your team or a better striker away from winning it. I think the trajectory, if the narrative weren't exposed about Pep's blinding obsession about winning the Champions League, and we were looking at a side that's never won it, having been final, semi-final, you'd be saying, well, with the addition of Haaland, this is coming. So I think the way we tell this story can be tilted a little bit because Pep is such a divisive, idiosyncratic guy, and who, because he taunts and teases when he gets questions he doesn't like, it piques everybody's interest. And those who don't enjoy him, don't like him, are loving the opportunity to rub salt in the wound. And I think that while he patently craves winning it, to think about it as something as an all-consuming obsession, the only reason he would stay at a club, again, I don't think that gets the measure of Guardiola. If he stays at this club where he's at now, which certainly for this season I expect him to do, it's not going to be because he sits at night, with who was that super fan in Alan Partridge who had Partridge tattooed on his body and images of him everywhere, and Alan runs away and shouts, "You're a mentalist." I don't think we're ever going to see little Foden going into Pep's flat and seeing tattoos of the Champions League all over his eyelids and run away and shout, "You're a mentalist." I also don't think that Pep is either tired or beaten. And, I could be wrong, but I don't expect him to take a sabbatical. I do think he's happy at City. I do think he thinks he's close to it. Until last night, there was a distinct possibility of them becoming English and European champions. And they lost a side which is obsessed too. Yeah. Obsessed. And we treat that as a healthy thing about Real Madrid.
No, totally. And that has been incredibly successful for them. I was asking if there's a bit of a sliding doors moment then in terms of the transfer policy. Do they break the bank to get Declan Rice because they feel like, as well as the striker, that a midfielder, somebody who could be an extra defender for them if they wanted to inject that, whatever it takes next season to make sure they get over the line? Is this the summer they do that, or is Haaland the only thing that comes in the summer and you think, okay, that's fine, we're going to add that one piece because we're just one piece away?
I don't know their finances well enough to give you that answer. I'd be bluffing, and I don't think there's a point in doing that. I think my opinion is that the Haaland thing has been very close to agreed for some weeks. I'll be fascinated. I'll be absolutely fascinated. Haaland is a young man. We forget that because he's bestial in how he plays and performs, and he's bright and he's articulate. his agent just died, and there's no question he'll have sat and watched that last night. Does it influence you? If you think Real Madrid are still interested in pairing you and Mbappe, do you look at that last night and go, whoa, I want a slice of that attitude. I want a slice of that fan base. I want a slice of that glory. I have no idea if it influences you or not. And in business terms, I think the Real Madrid, Haaland, I think they were second runners after City, with Bayern Munich third. I personally don't think Haaland is going to Bayern Munich. I sat with people from a very high-ranking Premier club a couple of mornings ago with them saying, in their analytical view, the Bundesliga is in decline, and that the teams there are not exceptional, and that is part of the reason that Bayern Munich haven't trotted on this tournament, because they're being measured against slightly lesser sides week in, week out, and therefore I think Haaland will know that isn't staying there. I think that the City thing is extremely close. But if you walk, we're all still slack-jawed about that, and we don't have an opportunity to go and earn 30 million a season by playing for them. I just wonder, speculatively, what's Haaland's thoughts this morning, having watched that.
So that might still be up for grabs. And if that's the case, then you'd have to assume City will load up elsewhere to try and...
I'm only interested, Ger. I'm only interested in it if you're a youngster, if you're, 21, and you're sitting and watch that, and you know that there's still a possibility, and your world's been tipped upside down because your agent's no longer alive. It just intrigues me.
Playing at a brand spanking new stadium alongside the likes of Camavinga and Rodrigo over the next little while, that doesn't sound just too unappetizing.
Sort of things.
The other thing is that you're the one then who becomes the messiah at City, where you have in your memory your dad, that shirt, that colour. You're the one who delivers for them what nobody else could deliver.
I'm not making a case that he changed his mind. I just think it would be naive to think that because all our industry is obsessed about is figures and money, for us to believe, and I know this, I believe you do too, that footballers also think about what am I working, once the money is equal, once I'm about to become, a billionaire, how will it be? What will living be like?
Yeah. What's the weather like?
I have a family. What will the football be like? What's the culture like?
What's the golf course like?
Count. Well, I don't don't be annoying me now.
Come on, we got to finish.
I'm really glad he was sitting on his sofa at home with his baked beans and toast watching that. That's, Hi, Gareth.
There's no prospect of another minute's football for him or Aidan Hazard for Real Madrid ever, is there?
Well, no, don't pair them. Don't pair them, Jared. There isn't a prospect of another minutes for Bale. In the view and the voice of just about every Madridista, but Ancelotti's different. I couldn't swear to you that Ancelotti won't allow Bale on for a minute, at one of the thank you games for the league, because Ancelotti is made of different stuff. Would he be just about the only person? He probably would care more about that than Bale would do. I hate seeing Bale injured, and I wish him the absolute best, except in any putative playoff for the World Cup between Wales and Scotland, when, I hope he's got a back spasm then. Neither he nor his agents have in any way covered themselves in glory over the last year, and the mudslinging they do to Real Madrid, it takes no account of the way in which this situation has degenerated on their side as well. And if Gareth Bale is sitting watching that at home last night and not going, gee whiz, whoa, I wish I'd even been on the bench, come off the bench for that. If he feels no pang having watched that, then he's made of even more different gravy than I thought he was. But don't pair them with Hazard. Hazard has had the plate taken out of a metal plate taken out of an ankle injury. That boy made a huge mistake about eating crisps and drinking beer in the summer he was joining Real Madrid and joined the club fat. Since then, it's not been his fault. He's been dogged by injuries. He's been superseded by players who are performing out of their skin. He wants to be there. His contract remains. I don't think he'll accept a move. His contract lasts. Bale's is up. I think it would be sensible for Hazard to move on. I think that it's one of these things that just hasn't worked. But I go back to the fact that his current problems today date back to a moment in a Paris Saint-Germain match at the Bernabeu where Real Madrid were trouncing Paris Saint-Germain, and Meunier stepped on Hazard's ankle, and since then his ankle's been, chungo. And his attitude and his behaviour and his willingness to be ready for duty differentiate himself from Gareth Bale, who for 2/3 of his career needed to be defended and lauded and praised and better appreciated. And then for the final third, has made the bed he's lying in.
He phoned it in for sure. Graham, great stuff. Thanks a million. It's Graham Hunter giving us some thoughts there. What do you think?
Well, yeah, that last element of things and Bale and Hazard, I think it's pretty obvious that it's not going to be a final that's going to see those two players partaking. I think they've had such a great couple of rounds now at this point. It's going to be pretty similar to last night. The only change that you might see is like does someone like Camavinga actually, has he played his way into the starting team, or Rodrigo maybe even? Probably not is the answer, but like Liverpool are going to be entering that game with a little bit of caution about what the team sheet is actually going to be, and a little bit of uncertainty about what sort of team they're going. Well, no, sorry, what sort of team they're going to face is pretty obvious. Yeah. They're going to have the lion's share of possession. They're going to have most of the chances, and Real Madrid will probably come up with one late chance to equalise it once Liverpool are 1-0 up or something.
Start of the second half, Real Madrid couldn't score, but did have more possession against a City side who we expected to have more possession. It was a weird kind of something happened. I don't know what it was. Yeah. 21 minutes past 8 this morning here. OTB AM is brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Up next, we're talking hurling with Aidan Fogarty. First, though, let's hear from the Football Pod's very own Tommy Rooney during the ad break, talking about his intense preparation ahead of the Triathlon that members of Team OTB are competing in next month. Team OTB are taking on Triathlon this June. It's all in partnership with Whoop, the personalised digital fitness and health coach that helps you unlock your inner potential. Check out whoop.com for more.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
The Football Pod on OTB Sports. Have you ever seen a team like Limerick that are so physically dominant? They're absolutely
financially dominant.
We're not exactly hurling aficionados on this pod now, but they do remind us of our team at our peak, that they can go through a phase of 7 or 8 minutes and just take the game away from the team.
Get the hop on everyone else and hear the Football Pod first on the OTB Sports app every Tuesday.
This is quite interesting because I remember going to the gym and thinking I was great, but on a single machine I was making so many mistakes on a single machine, and you can overdo it in terms of your training, and Whoop is kind of there to tell you as well, listen, this is how you manage this.
100%, Johnny. Like it's so useful in terms of monitoring your own sleep, the strain you're putting on yourself in your training. Like, you can see sometimes your strain can be really high, and you might be thinking, that's great, I'm working really hard. But actually, no, your body actually has to work really hard for you to perform at a certain level. So what you want to do is train at a certain level to get that strain down to a more manageable level. So I'll give you an example, right? I don't know what this says about my own fitness at the minute, but when I did the duathlon last year, my strain for it was 18.5, and I spent 31 minutes at 90 to 100% of my max heart rate. Okay. So, pretty intense. We had a game on St. Patrick's weekend, Gaelic football. I spent 40 minutes at 90 to 100% of my max heart rate. So I don't know whether I was trying more that time or I was running a bit harder, but it just shows you I would want that strain to come down as the season goes on. There's moments when I'm at my max heart rate, but I'm not gassing the whole way through the bloody game. So that's what you're kind of using the Whoop to work towards, and you can see your own progress. You know yourself when you're going to the gym. As you said, if you're not using the right machines, if you haven't been guided in the right way, you're not going to feel the progress. You're not going to want to keep going. But when you can see little incremental bits of improvement as you're working towards something, it's great. And I find the Whoop to be brilliant towards that.
This is Sport Ireland Campus. And here is where it all starts. From the little ones learning to the high-performance athletes leading. Here we go to play, to practice, to progress. Here is where communities in the nation come together to compete, to win, and to belong. Here we go to the next level, then on to the world stage. This is Sport Ireland Campus, and here we go. Visit sportirelandcampus.ie to be a part of it.
With prices from only €289 for fully comprehensive car insurance, everyone's making the jump to getsetgo.ie. New business policies only. Prices subject to minimum premiums. T's and C's apply. MCL Insurance Services Limited Trading is getsetgo.ie is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
It's 25 minutes past 8. We're turning to hurling. Aidan Fogarty is with us. Aidan, good morning to you. How are you getting on?
Morning, lads. How are you doing?
Yeah, pretty good. Let's talk about the match at the weekend before we talk about the afters. A lot of the actual match itself has been overshadowed somewhat. What's your instinct now about where Kilkenny are and on the evolutionary scale, the style of play that they're trying to get to? How successful are they, and how much are we reading into the fact that they got back into the game against Galway only to lose it at the very end? Like, what's the truth about where they are at the moment?
Yeah, I think some of their old frailties kind of came back to haunt them a small bit. I think up front, Kilkenny are struggling and have been struggling for long periods of games over the last couple of years. They're very reliant on, say, certain players. So if I was looking at the weekend, over the years you had TJ Reid, and we always said TJ Reid are making them tick, and take TJ Reid out of that team and out of that forward line particularly, and see how good they are. Now TJ is probably coming to the end of his career, possibly. You know, he's 34, 35 years of age. You know, you wonder how much is left of him. I think there's still something to offer, obviously, and I think being taken off the last day, he won't be too happy. But I suppose we have Owen Cody stepping up to the plate now, and if you take Owen Cody out of that forward line, nobody else really stood up. So for me, it's really the forwards dropping or not scoring enough for us. Owen Cody was the main man on Sunday for Kilkenny, and he was very dangerous, very good. Walter Welsh was very good as well. But after that, you know, Billy Ryan got a goal, it was handed to him on the plate. Keown came off the bench, was kind of irrelevant really. Pádraig Welsh was curtailed, and I was surprised really. He was on the ball a little bit, but in fairness, the centre back for Galway really hurled him up a stick, and that's where I felt the game was kind of lost, and we were kind of hurling in patches, but it was more so Galway letting them back in the game. I felt Galway were a 5 or 6 team, point better team than Kilkenny on the day, and we were lucky to get the goal. Last year we were lucky to get a goal in a semi-final as well, and really it's just the heart and the grit and the determination and the drive that we always associate with Kilkenny that kind of shone through. So for me, it's up front really. Our backs, I felt, in fairness to them, they stood up, they cleared a lot of ball, and they did feel a little bit more comfortable playing the short game. But in saying that, there was a few times the ball went over the line. Owen Murphy made a few uncharacteristic mistakes, you know, a hand pass that went astray, a ball out over the line. So I still think they're getting to grips of the short game in the high intensity of Championship. And in the league, they're getting away with it maybe because it's not as intense. But in Championship, it's showed up slightly, the small little mistakes. They're getting turned over and they're getting punished because of it. And that's what I feel that is still happening to Kilkenny. They still haven't got to the short game 100%.
The TJ conversation is really interesting. Like, it feels this is a very new conversation. It feels that nobody would have had these doubts around TJ last year, or even in the club season that we saw with Ballyhale. Am I just missing the conversation? Has this been happening for a while, or is this very much reacting to what's happened last weekend in particular?
No, I think, well, in Kilkenny, I think anyway, and the word on the street is, I suppose, what's left in TJ. We're all a little bit worried because, as I said, he was the leader for Kilkenny for so many years. He's such a brilliant and such a talented hurler. But the reality is what's left in TJ. I suppose looking at him on Sunday, he got a ball there, he put it over the bar. Other times he would have put the head down and took on the goal. You know, just small things. Now, he's been carrying a knock. He's been playing injured for Ballyhale for the last couple of months. I think it was a groin. He got an operation on it. So he's struggling with that. And when you're at that age where you're struggling with an injury, other little niggles tend to come at you as well. So he is struggling to find a bit of fitness. But in saying that, at the top level, at the club scene, you didn't really see it. But when you go to inter-county level, at the top level, that's where you're found out. And it's that 1% of where you're actually really at. And then also with that, it's the mind thing. When you're getting shoving on, when you hear little rumours maybe of what's left in you, when you're taken off in a game, your mind as an older player plays tricks on you, and you're more kind of worried. As a young fella, you don't care. It's kind of off the cuff. You're young. You're kind of you don't mind anymore. But when you're older, you take everything to heart. So I just felt in the time when he took the point instead of goal, if that was TJ of old, he would have been just so driven and in his head that I can get this. But maybe there's small doubts creeping into him. But in saying that, he is injured. He got 35 minutes into him. He could start. He probably will start the next day. And there's definitely 2 or 3 more big games in him. But it's just it's creeping up on him a small bit, I think.
And maybe that's the problem for Kilkenny now, is their remaining fixtures are Dublin and Wexford, so they've got, in inverted commas, the easy fixtures out of the way in their first couple. So, like, is it you can't really rest him at this point? I mean, and it sounds like he could do with a couple of weeks off.
Yeah, no, I can't. You definitely can't rest him. It's coming week on week. We have to lose now against Galway, so we're under pressure. We're under pressure going to Parnell Park. A serious place to go to. Dublin will be out of their skins, and that's going to be a tough physical game. You know, we're after coming out of a physical game against Galway. We're going to go into another game against Dublin and Parnell. They're going to be hitting us left, right and centre. And, you know, there's no room. If you get injured at this time of year, especially if you get a bad injury, you're basically gone for the season. You see John McGrath or Tip, you know, his Achilles gone for the season. If you pick up a niggle and a knock, it's going to be so hard to kind of curtail it and get your confidence up and get flowing, because the last thing you need when the matches are coming thick and fast is an injury on your mind. And when an injury is on your mind, you're kind of minding it, and you cannot mind it in these games because they're just coming so thick and fast.
Okay, what did you make of the handshake?
Well, I tell you, if Steven Spielberg would be proud of RTE's camera work, I think on Sunday, he should have got an Oscar for it. But look, there's so much talk about it. It overshadowed the game in ways.
I don't remember what happened in the game. There was a goal at the end. There was a bit of a dodgy free. What else happened? I can't remember. If Kilkenny Galway meet again, will they even show the match? I think they'll just be straight on Cody and on Henry for 70 minutes. But look, I think there was something in it, lads. And I think it's there's a few scenarios. I think, look, Henry has hurled for Kilkenny for 12 or 13 years. Won whatever, he's 10 All-Irelands. Just a Kilkenny man at heart, loves his county, loves playing for his club. And he's after going to Galway, and he's after taking probably a couple of secrets out of the Kilkenny dressing room. He's probably bringing, you know, things that we would have learned over the years, and rightly so. You know, things you learn, you're going to implement on your own team. So he's gone to Galway, up to Connacht with all this knowledge. The second thing, I think, now this is probably from a Cody's perspective, and I'm not saying like it's so hard to read Cody, but the Bob O'Keefe Cup, Brian Cody wants that Bob O'Keefe Cup staying in Leinster. I feel he wants a Kilkenny to win it. He wants a Wexford to win it. He'd be a traditionalist. He'll be old school. He'd feel that cup should be staying in Leinster and not to Connacht. That's the second thing. And then you have the match itself. You had that last couple of minutes of play where Donnelly got a goal that he shouldn't have got. There was probably a hostile atmosphere in Salthill. I played in Salthill before. It can be very hostile. The fans can get in on you. You know, the crowd was roaring. The ball is poked out straight away. A free that, was it a free? Was it not a free? And next thing, just put over the bar and just blown up. And I'd say Cody was absolutely fuming with the free. I'd say he thought it was definitely not a free, and that the referee should have even blown it up after full time just for a draw. So you can imagine all that going on, the crowd on top of you, and he was making a beeline for Callum Lyons, and next thing, Henry kind of caught in the way of that. And I'd say the red mist was down over Brian, and that he was fuming the ref, and next thing he saw Henry and said, in his own head, I would have felt that he kind of said, you should be down with Kilkenny, or you should be, you know, you're a Kilkenny man, and next thing we're up here in Galway after getting beaten by a Galway team you're managing. And in the heat of the moment, I think he just kind of let his guard down slightly. And, you know, 3 minutes later, I think that would have been a different handshake. And that's right. Like, if I was up there and if I was managing, and if I got bet by a pint that I didn't think was a free and was over the bar, I'd be tick. And I don't care who I'd be shaking hands with, I'd be angry. And I think players in general are competitors. And Brian always has a managerial battle on the line as well. Don't forget that. He had it with Ger Eoin over the years. He had it with Davy Fitz over the years. I think Dalo threw a shoulder into him there. Yeah, Dalo, yeah.
2004 or 2003, around that time as well with Clare.
Dalo would be practically playing right corner back sometimes.
He would. He'd be sneaking up, giving him digs. So for Brian, there's always a managerial battle on the line as well, and that kind of feeds into the team. And if you ever look at the qualities of the Kilkenny teams over the years, and it's a credit to Brian Cody, it's drive, it's heart, it's determination, and I always say that a team reflects the manager. And I think Brian has a persona on the sideline. He wants to win the battle on the sideline, and he wasn't going to give into softness, shaking Henry's hand, saying congratulations, well done, a big chat, a big overall friends.
No hug.
That's not Cody's style.
No.
Well, I was just gonna. I didn't realise that. So, like, the bit about the Baba O'Keefe Cup and the tradition of, you know, Leinster teams competing for the Leinster trophy. So, like, in terms of those Leinster counties that Kilkenny would have had a rivalry with, I would have assumed maybe Wexford would have been the biggest one. But actually, from what you're saying there, in Brian Cody's mind, Galway is the real. Is a real source of not hatred but distaste for Brian Cody within the Leinster Championship.
Well, I suppose, like, it depends who you're playing. It depends, like, the competition between the teams. If we're beating Galway every year, year in, year out, and not even giving us a game, then they're not really becoming our rival. It depends. Wexford kind of came all of a sudden. They beat us in a Leinster final. Next thing, all of a sudden, Wexford were our biggest rival. You know, and Cody had a hatred for them, and whoever team is beating you, you have a hatred for. Like when Tip beat us, we didn't like that, and so it's, I suppose it differs from year on year. But definitely, Brian is a traditionalist, and he wouldn't like to see the O'Keefe Cup going to Galway. And Galway would have took a scalp out of Kenny over the years. In 2005, Roderick flicked the ball over Kennedy's head, you know, to beat us in an Ireland semi-final. They beat us in 2012 in a Leinster final. So they have taken scalps out of Kilkenny, and I just feel that Brian wouldn't like to see that cup going to Connacht, and he'd like to see, like, Munster or Munster. He'd like to see Leinster or Leinster, and he wouldn't like to see it going out to the counties.
That's pretty interesting. I have one last thing about this, right? The aftermath, as we've, we're still talking about it 4 days later, and that's just because the soap opera is spectacular. There's been criticism of Cody. You know, he should have been a bigger man. All that they hurled together, they soldiered together. They're comrades. You're basically saying, I mean, come on, that's not the case. We would all have been exactly the same. That's the whole point here. We're playing to win. So in Kilkenny, is everybody broadly supportive of their man?
I think in Kilkenny, the view is mixed. I think everyone has a little wry smile on their faces going around. Everyone has their own opinion, and look, I think people have the utmost respect for Brian Cody, and they have the utmost respect for Henry Shefflin. I'm just saying, in my view, in the heat of battle, you know, friendships, no one is there to make friends at the top level. And Brian is after winning whatever, he's 12, 13 All-Irelands. He's not there to make friends. He said it before, he's not there to make friends. And anyone who's making friends and being everything is jolly and everything is happy, you're not going to win a whole lot. So in Kilkenny, everyone respects Henry gone to Galway, and you know they're not saying he shouldn't have went or he should have went. Everyone has a different opinion. That's what I'm probably trying to say.
Yeah.
The competitive nature.
But no one's blaming Cody for being a little bit thick in the aftermath of the game. It's like he just got beaten by somebody who he, you know, shouldn't be getting beaten by in his view, and so therefore that's okay, I guess.
Yeah, like in my view, as I said, like everyone has their own opinion. People, like some people say, like he should have had a chat. He's after winning 10 All-Irelands with him. You know, great friends and all that. But I just say, in my view, it's the competitive nature, and you know, 2 seconds after a final whistle, after getting beaten by a pint, I don't know if you're going to be all chummy to anybody.
No,
you know, so that's my take on it. I think 10 minutes later, they probably would have had a wry smile and probably said, "Look, we'll get you again," or whatever the case may be. But definitely not in that scenario. But I do think, from a Cody's play, I think it did slip from him a small bit. I think he did get caught up in the moment a little bit. I think he was fuming because Brian is not a man to bring attention onto himself, and never was. And he knew cameras were going to be on that handshake, so that's why I feel he did let it slip a bit. And Henry, if you look back at the second video I seen where he looked across at him, he was kind of thinking, what was that about? What just happened there? So that's where I think the conflict was, just for them couple of minutes. But then I think 3 minutes later it would have been just nothing in it.
We're going to go through the contenders to the throne, I think, Aidan. We're going to go through, like, if you asked us to do your power rankings, it would have been Limerick at number 1, so that's boring. So what we're going to do is do our top 5 contenders to Limerick this year in the All-Ireland Hurling Championship. So do you want to take us through these 5 to 1?
Yeah, sure. I think, look, it's probably easier to start with the team I think that's capable of beating Limerick. In my view, and I still think Waterford are equipped to take down the Limerick team. I think they're closing a gap a small bit. I think last year they were beaten in the semi-finals as 125 to 17 points. They were beaten by 11 points. This year they got it back to 3 points now, albeit they kind of got 1 or 2 late goals, but still got it back to 3 points. I think Waterford are on the road long enough now with Carl. I think they have a settled-ish enough team. I think their confidence in themselves are high after winning the league. I think the players themselves are buying in to Liam Carr's mantra. I think they do work hard. Very, very pacey team when they get going. And they have game changers. You know, they have Hutchison inside. They have Kiley now inside as well. A ball winner, can throw it out. Barron in midfield as well. Austin Gleeson. Like, they really have household names now. And it's coming to the stage where I think Watford need to get over the line. And if they don't get over the line in the next couple of years, it'll start to slip again. And if they win 1, they could win 2 in a couple of years. And I just feel physical. To beat Limerick, you need to be physical. I think you need to get goals and you need to go at them. Now, that's not saying you're going to be breaking every tackle, but you need that in your locker room. And I think Watford do have that mentality. And as I said, they're playing as a team long enough now, and they have a good panel and a good bench there as well. And you're going to need that.
Who's number 2?
Number 2, we were talking about them a couple of weeks ago. I think Clare are really, really good.
Right.
I had my doubts about them, but I think they're really good, and I think they're number 2 for the reason that they're interchanging their forwards first of all. So that's going to keep Limerick thinking. So you'll have Shane O'Donnell could be in full forward. Peter Duggan could be out half forward. Ian Galvin could start anywhere. Tony Kelly hasn't even set the scene alight, even though he's still scoring his 3 or 4 points. So I think their forward line are really, really good, and I think if you look at Peter Duggan's body language, he's hitting lads. He's aggressive. He's an angry looking man on the pitch, and you need that. And I think the half back line of McInerney, Connellan, and I can't think of the other fella there, but McInerney and Connellan, and I can't think of the other lad. I think they're set up really, really well, and I think they have a good strategy of how they're playing.
Okay.
They know if a guy is going to midfield, they're either holding or they're following. They have their sweeper system if they need it. They don't tend to play it, and they can really, really mix it.
All right. So who's 3?
3, I'd probably go for Galway. I think there's more in them.
Yeah.
I think I think against Wexford, they let Wexford back into it. They should have won that game by, in my view, 4 or 5 points. They should have beat Kilkenny by 4 or 5 points. They're strong and they're physical as well. They need a bit more belief. They need a bit more drive. They need a bit more intensity. But that's things they can work on.
Okay.
But I think Galway in general have the ammunition, and they took it to Limerick. They were probably the contenders in 2019, 2020.
Yeah.
So that's only 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah,
so,
and it's a different team. Well, look, I suppose it's the same like Real Madrid. Several of the important characters of the team are still there. So who's next?
I'll go from Kilkenny then after that, yeah.
I think so too. I've seen them written off. Some of my friends are like thinking they're not going to make it out of Leinster, let alone the Leinster final. But okay, so you're getting them through to the Leinster final, then I suspect. Is that right?
I'm getting through to the Leinster final. Now they mightn't top the table, but they could come second. But it's serious 2 matches they have to play.
That's what we want.
I think Kilkenny. I think if they get it right, I think because they'll have all the aggression and they'll have the intensity, they'll have all that. If they just get their hurling right and get a few players playing in top form, on top of Adrian Mullen, he hasn't hit the heights that he has hit. Billy Ryan, there's so much potential in Billy Ryan. If you get TJ Reid back to 90% of what he was, they're a force to be reckoned with.
Okay.
And they will be angry.
And I think they're the physicality as well. I'm dying to see them against Limerick. And who's 5?
Yeah. 5, then I would probably go with Dublin. You know, and I'm saying that because I'm thinking who's going to come out of the 2 provinces. And I think it'll be Waterford, I think it'll be Limerick, and I think it'll be Clare, maybe not in the order, and I think it will be Galway, Dublin and Kilkenny.
All right.
Dublin is my 5th.
Good stuff. Aidan, great to have you with us this morning. That was brilliant. Thanks a million.
Thanks, guys. Love her.
That's Aidan Fogarty, Taggy, giving us some thoughts on Handshake 8 and who's going to make it out at this stage. They would be good quarterfinals, semi-finals.
Oh, absolutely. They'd be excellent. Can't believe we spent so long on a tabloid subject this morning.
It's 8:45. John Duggan is with us. John, good morning to you.
Ger Eoin, how are we doing?
Very well. We're going on the road with the football pod. We're going to Castlebar. Owen, we were thinking, should we send Owen to Castlebar again? But he's barred from Mayo.
Barred from Castlebar, yeah.
After his antics.
After medium and
years.
Well, that seems to be like a safe haven for me. McBurn's everywhere else, though. Got to be careful on those.
You made a mockery.
The football pod is going on the road.
Oh, and you should go. You should go and maybe.
You should be the fluffer that night.
You should turn about in disguise or something like that.
I've been back to Castlebar since twice, yeah, and here I am, one piece.
And did you ever tell the Mayo fans what you actually think of them, like, and what you say off air about them?
No, I wouldn't tell them that, because off air I just call them every word under the sun and I absolutely despise them.
The football pod with Paddy Andrews and James Donoghue is hitting the road this summer. We want you to be there. The first stop is the Royal Theatre in Castlebar on Thursday, June the 2nd. Owen Sheehan will not be there, but Paddy, James and Tommy will be. They're going to dissect, analyse and celebrate Mayo football as well as Championship 2022 in the usual football pod style. That's the football pod with Paddy and James in Castlebar on the 2nd of June. Tickets are on sale now. otbsports.com/event to get yours. Stay tuned to OTB for details and more shows to come. John.
Only one game in town, lads, in terms of stories, which was last night. It was incredible. It was, if I'm allowed to say this, Ger, a religious experience. Because we know the football is a global religion and nothing else.
A fluke? Justice?
No, my kind of feeling about it was that bus journey said a lot to me, and I think Real Madrid went to war and they would not die, and that's why they won. There's an intangible to it to me. There's
twice in a week where the bus journey seems to have been the turning point for Everton as well. It's like, is that all we need? Is just it. So
a good bus journey.
Kildare supporters, get your white flares out. Make sure that when eventually we get to the Leinster final, if that happens, that the road, the M7.
That would be pretty cool if that happened, wouldn't it? And no, but there was something. There was a character. There was the whole legacy of Real Madrid. The players. This is not Zidane's team. There was a will there, and you could see City wilting under the Klieg lights of the Bernabeu last night. So they did it against PSG. They did it against Chelsea, and like maybe you could argue that City last night did nothing wrong, and if Grealish scores, then we're having a different conversation. But I suppose the narrative is that Guardiola's now lost 6 semi-finals. The narrative is that City have lost to Monaco, to Lyon, to Spurs in these big Champions League games, and they can't get the job done. Now, whether it was that because they weren't far enough ahead in the first leg, should he have taken off De Bruyne last night, because I think he is the leader in the City team. Lots of questions to answer, but like it's just they got to have. Florentino Perez obviously is the architect of this thankfully foiled Scooby-Doo style European Super League, and they're talking about doing away with the second legs. Actually, the away goals, you didn't seem to miss them. But you got to have this, folks. You got to have this in your life to be able to get up and talk about this the next stage. It's brilliant.
No, it's sensational. Did you see the theory on Twitter recently that Scooby can't speak, that Shaggy's so high that he thinks Scooby's speaking, and then everybody else just hears Shaggy talking in the weird voice and assuming that the dog is talking to Shaggy again? That's my favourite theory. A lot of LSD.
That makes a lot of sense, actually.
Doesn't it? Yeah.
It makes more sense than like the live action version.
Well,
the dog is talking.
There's definitely some munchies going on given the amount of sandwiches they eat.
Scooby snacks.
Yeah, there's definitely some munchies going on there.
And who's Scrappy then? Is Scrappy also like a figment of his imagination, or...?
I don't know. The theory broke down at that stage. James Doyle says City fans complaining about Casemiro and studiously ignoring Laporte slapping Modric and getting away with it as per. And Anthony Ryan points out Aston Villa have more European Cup wins than all the sports washing project clubs combined. Wait till we tell them about Notts Forest.
We haven't spoken about the slap enough, really. Like Laporte slapping a guy and then going down. That was genius. That was the high point for Manchester City last night. That's how you do it.
But I mean, obviously he got the memo. Is he good enough? Is Zinchenko good enough? Like,
no.
You think that you really think like you think there's a quality deficit in this team? Like,
but there's also a rust deficit. There's a rust issue there, and Zinchenko looked uncomfortable.
You think? Yeah.
And like the thing about it is, Real will now go into this final, guys, fresh. Because they've won La Liga, they've wrapped it up.
Yeah, nothing to do.
How will this affect City in the Premier League title race? Obviously, we'll have all the games on OTB Sports Radio. And Liverpool could end up with all of this. They could end up with a whole Rounders, Matt Damon style pot, or they could end up with maybe two of the things.
So yesterday, if you asked Liverpool fans who do they want to win last night, they would have said Real Madrid. But what maybe they didn't consider is that if Real Madrid got through, then Manchester City might be a little bit broken heading into this title race. And I think that last night is a double whammy. Sorry, Liverpool fans would have wanted Real Madrid to win anyway, sorry. Of course they wouldn't have wanted Manchester City in the final for quality's sake. But I think it's a double whammy, I should say, for Liverpool now, that they also have Real Madrid in the final as well as Manchester City being a little bit vulnerable in the title race because of what happened last night. I think that there has to be a little bit of a...
How will the City players feel at the moment? They must be just absolutely gutted. And the Premier League, if Arsenal or if Spurs won the Premier League or Villa won the Premier League, we would think of probably the best thing of our whole lives. And now City win the Premier League might be a little bit soulless for them.
Well, think of the Carlo Ancelotti cigar. They celebrated like mad winning the league. I think that's one of those things that they never take for granted, winning the league. So I think they'll still enjoy that, and it is reasserting their dominance. And I think they're going to respond to what happened last night by crushing everybody else in the league for the rest of the season.
It always feels to me, though, Pep with the Premier League trophy is a little bit like the guy who's in a new relationship who doesn't actually want to be there. He's like, I'm very, very happy here. Really, this is definitely the situation I want to be in.
What level of projection is going on here, Owen?
Absolutely none. It's like, I'm very, very happy with this shiny thing over here. I don't want the other shiny thing. This is definitely a shiny thing that I want.
Okay, these are the trophy relationships that you've had over the last...
Well, obviously, yes. Of course. What can I do?
Wow.
What a weird analogy. I accept how it looks.
Owen Sheehan, great with domestic trophies.
I get how it looks.
Okay, good.
Owen Sheehan. Owen Sheehan wins all the domestic trophies, but in Europe...
Okay, it was bad. It was a bad analogy.
So when you're away for a weekend...
Let me think of another way of putting... There is no other way of putting this, because...
Go to Bratislava. Yay.
Pep is pretending to be happier than he really is, basically, when he poses with that Premier League trophy in 3 weeks' time.
Well,
could have just said that.
Well, good man. It's 8:52. Is there anything else where we get to virtual insanity?
Let's get to the golf tips.
Virtual insanity.
You have entered Power Drive.
11% profit going into the Wells Fargo Championship. Starts tomorrow just outside Washington. Starts today because I don't know what day it is. But starts 11:50 today just outside Washington. Rory McIlroy, the headliner this week. And the headline tip is Matt Fitzpatrick for 22-1 for €3.50 each way. Matt Fitzpatrick never won on the PGA Tour. It's going to happen soon. It could be this week. Like, he's playing really well. 7 top 20s in his last 9 starts. Didn't putt very well the last time. I'm going to give him another chance. This is a tighter course. He plays well on tough courses. This is a course, the TPC Potomac, where you need accuracy, and Matt Fitzpatrick is the headline tip this week for 22-1 for $3.50 each way. England's Matt Fitzpatrick. Second selection, Denny McCarthy, is 80-1 for 3 each way. He's the local boy. He's from the area in Maryland or whatever way you want to pronounce it. 49th in the FedEx Cup standings, much improved. One of the best putters on tour. Topped the putting stats in 2019-2020. Left the home crowd behind him. Is really happy about his game. Denny McCarthy, I think, is a good each way bet this week at 80-1. Doc Redman is 125-1 for 3 each way. Was third on his last start in New Orleans in that team competition. Said he had a blast. Played in this tournament when it was called the Quicken Loans National in 2018, and it was only his 5th PGA Tour start, and finished with a 64, was around 32nd. Doc Redman is a 24-year-old former US amateur champion that I think is a talented guy, and he could definitely surprise at 125-1 this week. The final two, Keith Mitchell, if you want an accurate player, 50-1 for 2 each way. He's second off the tee this season in terms of strokes gained, and has been a bit under the radar because he hasn't played for a while in the stroke play. 4 top 10s this year. And Doug Gim for 150 each way at 55-1. Another very accurate player. Was a better amateur than Scotty Scheffler, Will Zalatoris. Hasn't really translated to the PGA Tour because he can't putt very well. But if he holds a few putts this week, I think he's got a chance. So Doug Gim, we have Keith Mitchell, Doc Redman I really like this week, Denny McCarthy. And the headline tip for Virtual Insanity is Matt Fitzpatrick. It starts today, folks. If you're going to have a flutter, never bet more than you can afford.
All right, that's this week's Virtual Insanity.
You have entered Power Drive.
All right, that's more from John Duggan, of course, on Saturday afternoon on Off the Ball on News Talk, and you can read his stuff and get Virtual Insanity on otbsports.com. And a reminder, OTB AM is brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. On Owen's anti-British response, wow, ha ha ha, fair play Owen, hard to believe Jack Grealish uses email.
It is hard to believe, especially a big game last night.
And then we missed the trick. Eric Doran says, come on, you really needed to narrate that letter whilst playing Eminem Stan. We did miss a trick.
Yeah.
We should open these things to see the
creative process would be better if everybody was involved.
The hive mind.
Yeah.
All right, it is time for the second ever Have You Seen with Joseph Conroy. Joseph, good morning to you. Oh, silence. Frozen.
Morning, how's it going?
Yeah, yeah, you're not frozen.
Hello.
How are you? Very good. The old internet's getting warmed
Very
up.
good. If you can hear me, congratulations, Alan. That was very big of you. Fair play.
Thank you. I thought so too.
Where are we starting? So this is my first time doing this, Joseph. So what happens?
It's our brand new kind of revisiting documentaries, kind of at random, but also because they kind of bring up interesting themes for us to do a bit of a deep dive into. That's kind of the elevator pitch.
Sounds good.
So the late call up this week is Katie, the 2018 Katie Taylor documentary, which just came to mind to me the other night after kind of the fallout of the fight and kind of soaking it all up and taking in all the reaction. It's amazing that's only from 2018, considering how much has happened since then. But just kind of there's a few points I want to get to. I might just start off by setting the scene, the way the documentary itself sets itself up, by just playing you kind of the opening sequence here, which is Eddie Hearn speaking about his first interaction with Katie Taylor.
At midnight, the 4th of October 2016, she actually sent me a direct message on Twitter. Hi Eddie, I hope you don't mind me reaching out like this out of the blue. I've been seriously considering turning pro the last few months. I think I could do for women's pro boxing what I did for the amateur sport. Of course, the pro game is impossible without a great promoter. Hi Katie, I've never been involved with women's boxing, but let's talk. From the amateur game, someone who's achieved that much always deserves the time to at least hear her side out. I've never met anyone so driven, forget boxing, in life. You know, it got moving very quickly. You know, what's gone on with her life, it's not something really I've talked about. You know, it's personal.
It's been a tough few months. I needed a change, and ultimately I do want to bring women's boxing to a new level.
Do I know Katie? Probably not. I don't think many people really know Katie Taylor.
Right, so that's the opening sequence to the documentary Katie. It's available for $1.99 on Amazon. YouTube and Sky have it as well. It's paywall there, obviously, so if you're a subscriber, you can get it. And we figured this was a good thing to look back on this week. Ross Whitaker made that. You know, you'll be familiar with Ross from some of the other great Irish sports documentaries over the last decade or so. He made a brilliant one about surfing, which you should, about particularly surfing aliens down in Clare. And I guess interesting that I wonder, would he say the same thing now, Eddie Hearn, that he doesn't know her? Has she become less guarded as that period of her life has receded?
Well, I presume, and like Joe, like I mean, you just rewatched it. Like I only saw it when it came out. Like the whole point of the documentary, from my perspective anyway, and the thing I learned the most was the seclusion that Katie had, I guess, opted for in terms of her training in Connecticut. And as far as I'm aware, that hasn't changed over the last little while. So,
do you feel though that like she's become less guarded? You know, that there's more of, I mean, we still don't know that much about her personal life. And just recently in the press conferences or in the interviews, she was talking about people don't ask the male boxers the same questions. And it's true, they don't, you know?
Yeah.
So do you feel like you know more about Katie Taylor now than you did?
No, I don't think I do. I'm not sure, Joe, what do you think? But like, I think that seclusion, as I mentioned there, I think kind of create, like helps kind of create that. We'll get him back in a sec.
Yeah.
And I think from Eddie Hearn's perspective, that might be the same thing. I'm sure over the last couple of weeks he feels that he knows Katie Taylor a bit better now than he has done at any other point, because there was a massive push behind this. You're in New York together, you're probably spending a bit of time together, but I suspect that he's relatively hands off in that regard, and it's just, you know, the public dealings that he has with each other. They got a very professional relationship, and I'd say that's the way she keeps it with everybody. I'd say her coach Ross is probably one of the people that knows her best, and I think you kind of got that feeling from the documentary as well.
Yeah, Joseph's back. Joseph, we were just
Morning
saying
again.
We were just saying we don't really know Katie Taylor. Eddie Hearn had said there at the end of that clip that, you know, none of us do, and I was making the point that we probably still would feel as a public the same.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I wonder as well, kind of, like, how much do we want to know Katie Taylor? We have like another quick clip here, which is Ross Whittaker actually speaking to Owen when the documentary came out, and I think it's interesting for a couple of minutes. We might play it quickly, and I might just come back to a couple of things that he says. This is a bit of a supercut of his chat with Owen back in 2018.
Katie is a fascinating character without necessarily being a colourful character. You know, and she's incredibly quietly charismatic, which is one of the first things I realised when I got to spend the first little bits of time with her. Is like, she's so charismatic and without saying anything. Katie had kind of always been interested, or had for some time been interested in a documentary, because I think possibly, you know, she feels like her story should be documented in some shape or form, and it just had never worked out. And my approach to things, I suppose, is quite fly on the wall, or I sort of call it witnessing. You know, you want to witness the story as it happens, and we kind of felt that would work better for her, you know, to just kind of be there, to kind of gauge for her as more of an introverted person when was enough, you know, when to push it and when not to push it. She just bought into it, and I'm delighted she did. I think this film's kind of important. You know, it's important to have been able to document someone as noteworthy as Katie is, and as who's kind of a legend of sport, and to be able to kind of have that document there into the future, because I think it'll be something that people will look back upon when they think of Katie Taylor in the future. And she said to me to start, I want it to be the truth. I want it to be raw if it has to be raw. If we're going to do it, let's do it properly. And we could agree on that, obviously.
Yeah, and look, I guess that's the whole point, that it is something that you look back on this week in the aftermath of her beating Amanda Serrano in Madison Square Garden.
Yeah, exactly. And kind of, he's talking about this being potentially an important thing to document, and kind of, I like as well the way he kind of use that phrase, bearing witness, the idea of kind of being the fly on the wall, watching this amazing story unfold. Back in 2018, there is kind of, he's talking about sort of, and I think part of what they're using that Eddie Hearn clip there to allude to about getting to know Katie is like, this all kind of came a bit against the backdrop of Rio and against the backdrop of the breakdown relationship with her father, who used to be her coach, and kind of her parents separating. So that's kind of in the background of the film. Even watching it now, kind of on a week like this, going back to it, it's really interesting how much kind of Rio is this kind of big narrative in it, and it's a big narrative, and kind of at that time was like, these are big questions that need to be answered. And obviously she's kind of taken part in this project where we're getting these insights that we don't typically get from her, especially kind of given her personality and given that she's not sort of this kind of big like presence who's kind of always coming out addressing things or in the media. But why I think it's good to go back to it this week is kind of how quickly all that's kind of moved on, and almost the goalposts have changed. This piece goes from her kind of turning pro, like we've kind of seen there, and sort of up to her first world title, which even, I think kind of what's most interesting is kind of seeing the lows of her rise, because it's kind of like you've got this kind of rocky sort of going up through the ranks in these different arenas. She has kind of this peak where she's on one of the AJ undercards. They're doing a real good job building her up. They're like, okay, we got to get you to the US, got to get you to the US. So she ends up in this card in the Barclays Centre kind of towards the end of 2017. And just on kind of what Ross said there about bearing witness, I just want to play another clip I think is really interesting, kind of hits the nail on the head, in my opinion, of why this film's really interesting to go back to this week. This is her after she's won in her US debut, fighting on an undercard, not even making the TV schedule. So this is kind of effectively a dark, what you call like a dark match, whatever, not really seen, very kind of underpowered opponent. This is the immediate reaction in the bowels of the Barclays Centre, and just the end of the clip is kind of a follow-up meeting with her manager, Brian Peters, afterwards. But let's have a listen to this.
We're all just a little bit, I suppose, disappointed.
You obviously would like to have a little more opposition just to keep advancing.
Like, they're all bitching. They don't get a break. They're not getting fights. They're not getting treated equal because they're not fighting.
The girls are always saying they're not getting the opportunities, and when the opportunities do come along, they should be jumping at those opportunities.
But it seems like with the win, there's a huge gap. It's like you've got lower level, and then all of a sudden, it's like they're up here. There's not much middle ground. Have bigger challenges to get ready for the title fights.
They get higher up the card, and obviously they get on the main TV, the mainstream TV, but the opponent has to be good for that, which the last one wasn't. You were nearly willing to fight for free to get a proper opponent, which people wouldn't understand. Do you remember saying that?
I do remember that. I was actually surprised I got a check after the fight.
Yeah, right. From there to selling out MSG, it's quite the journey.
Exactly, and that's only the middle of 2017. You've got the pandemic shutdown in between now and then. But where the film leaves us off as well, it's like before the two Pursoon fights and that fight last week, which are really like putting everything else aside. That's what I mean about looking at kind of even the focus that people looked at Katie in 2018 as this sort of, there's a bit of a shadow in the wake of kind of the failure to get the second Olympic gold. To kind of where we are now, all that kind of Rio just kind of seems like a footnote and a bit of a kind of process she had to go to get to where she was actually going, rather than this sort of, obviously at the time, I'm sure now she still speaks about kind of still being affected by that. But obviously as time goes on, as she keeps achieving these amazing things, that's just kind of going further and further into the background and kind of a less important part of the story. Just one other kind of aspect of it that I thought was really interesting, again, kind of looking at the frame of kind of going back after the weekend, was we get nuggets. Like she addresses her family situation in the film and kind of speaks about sort of obviously it being a tragedy from her perspective, but kind of that she's on good terms with both parents. And she kind of speaks a bit about sort of her personality, like she's living in rural Connecticut. She seems to be happy, kind of off the beaten track. She talks about how sort of there's these like real nice shots, I say, took a lot of time to probably get, where it's just her in the kitchen kind of saying, I meet a few people at church at the weekend, maybe I should start trying to make friends, and it kind of leaves it there. They're kind of like the little nuggets you're getting into kind of that kind of the Eddie Hearn sort of Dewey get to know Katie. But one thing that I think is really interesting in the idea of kind of this being an important piece that's kind of there as a fly on the wall and a bit of a kind of dead presence, just taking things in. There's this clip of kind of this ritual that she does, kind of a pre-fight prayer with her family, with her mother leading the prayer. So again, you can have a quick listen to this and we might talk about it afterwards.
Lord, I pray now for Katie tonight, Lord God, from this moment, Father God, before she even leaves this room, that your angels, Lord God, will be summoned, Lord God, that they will be posted around her, Lord God. You will guard and protect her now in all our ways, Lord God.
She has to win this world title fight because she's staked so much on it. If she loses this, she is on the trajectory of Rio.
And Lord, I pray for supernatural strength for her. I pray for accuracy in her punching, Father God.
Yes,
I pray that she will rise up.
That's Johnny Waterson's voice there in the middle of that as well, Joe.
Yeah, and again, you can hear he's saying sort of, if she doesn't deliver the world title, kind of, this is another potential Rio. That was kind of the way people were looking at all this, and the idea that it might have been a bit of a folly to go pro, and sort of looking back, it's a bit of kind of like her and Eddie Hearn have kind of built it and people have come type of thing. And like we heard that other clip, the frustration of kind of the gap between the lower level opponents and then kind of you're going into a shark tank at the other end, and now she's kind of swimming with the sharks. But we can look back at this kind of period. But I thought that was really interesting, because obviously you hear kind of that she's a very religious person and that she's kind of like that her Christianity is very important to her. But I think in terms of what the documentary is setting out to do, in terms of kind of witnessing what's happening, those scenes backstage, I think are just kind of, it's kind of amazing to see. It's one of those kind of standout moments from the film, and kind of there's tears streaming down her face while her family kind of have their arms on her and are going through the prayer. And it's kind of, it's something as well I was thinking about, like that whole, like I wouldn't be a particularly religious person. I come from kind of a fairly bread and butter kind of Catholic background, but that whole kind of sort of almost militant Christianity and this idea of kind of God's angels are with you and you're almost kind of like a warrior of God. It's probably not it's probably something we hear a lot about kind of in combat sports, and you hear of a lot of fighters with kind of very deep faiths. But this is almost something that maybe we're more used to hearing from kind of American fighters. And it's interesting as well as even kind of like the psychology of sort of having that faith behind her and kind of leaning on it. I think it adds a lot to her story and a lot to kind of understanding her personality and kind of her being a bit of a different sports person. So I think kind of all this stuff, like half the documentary is kind of the amateur career, and then the second half is kind of this pro stuff where it's kind of the fly in the wall stuff. And for me, I think the first half will be great in future as I kind of, because it has brilliant archive footage and brilliant input, but it's this second half I think is just so interesting, where you're just getting these little nuggets and just picking up these little things. But yeah, like even I heard Eddie Hearn the other day speaking about her walkout, which is kind of, it's almost kind of after the fact, looking back and thinking about that walkout. Like, I don't know what you guys thought when she was coming out, that kind of slow, methodical, almost kind of like, almost this kind of trudge to the ring. Like, were you guys thinking she's soaking it in, she's feeling the pressure, or what was going through your mind at that stage?
There's a possibility that she's terrified, and there's a possibility that she knows that she's going to destroy her opponent. And there was probably no middle ground in what I was thinking at that point.
I don't know. It was Deontay Wilder who came out in the thing that was 3 stone that left him absolutely exhausted.
That ruined his entire boxing career.
Exactly. That aside, I try not to read too much into the walkout, because otherwise it's just a means of getting you from the dressing room to the ring. And I don't know, you're imbuing it with some sense of meditative quality, something where, you know, John was talking about him having a religious experience watching the football last night. Where do you think this is part of the religious experience?
It's like, it's either part of religious experience or it's like trying to ice your opponent. It's sort of, I don't know, I thought it was really interesting because we've never really seen it. Even I saw Eddie Hearn speaking afterwards, he was watching it going, what the hell is this? Kind of, we've never seen this. We've never seen even kind of like, this, it's sort of like a grandiose gesture in its own way, that kind of, almost kind of like the Undertaker, like, slow walk staring you down. Eddie Hearn was also saying as well, he kind of got a message in the morning of her walkout song, which is it's called Awake My Soul. It's by this kind of Christian music collective, and it's this kind of like faith power ballad. And kind of Eddie said he was like listening to it having breakfast, and like in his head he was going, Jesus, we should not throw on a bit of U2 or something. But he was like, I'd never say it to her, but kind of that was going through his mind. But I thought it was interesting. I thought kind of it was just watching those kind of prayer scenes and watching that, it kind of just clicked together as sort of maybe understanding a little bit better her mindset going into these things. But just kind of an example of what I think is a great job that the documentary does, particularly that second half on the pro career, of just sort of like documenting this incredible thing that's going on.
It obviously is an incredible thing that's going on, but in the aftermath of the Masters, thinking that it was a bit ridiculous to be, you know, praising Jesus for making the ball to go into the hole, is it not a bit ridiculous too to be like, make my punches accurate? I don't understand. I don't understand the Christianity behind that.
It probably is, and also you'll see her saying like the most important part of her preparation is that pre-fight prayer. So like, I mightn't understand it, or it mightn't do anything for me or for you, same way we were speaking about the Master a few weeks ago, but obviously it clicks for her, whether it's sort of...
Is the most important part though, I do, like, the most important part is the sit-ups and the push-ups and the miles running and the hundreds and hundreds of rounds of sparring and the strength and conditioning and the tactical and technical stuff. Like that is the most important stuff.
Yeah, no, like it obviously is, and I do think there's like a slight difference between Scheffler and Katie with how they talk about it. Maybe Scheffler's just like ridiculously horizontal and just like, I mean, God just pulls the ball into the hole, whereas with Katie it's like a very sort of active thing.
Yeah, no, and I did feel like, so when she was an amateur, certainly we would have heard this the whole way through London.
It's less now, right?
It completely disappeared until the documentary, and then it has started to re-emerge, I think, recently enough. So
I was thinking
the publicity afforded the Faith is certainly a conversation, because we never spoke about it. We spoke about it in London.
Yeah,
a good bit, and she spoke about it a good bit.
Every single interview.
Yeah, and then it kind of disappeared, and it was backgrounded significantly. And I find all that stuff a massive turn off. I definitely find it, for any sports people talking about their faith, it's like I find it difficult to, because it seems very selfish generally. And I'm not talking about Katie in specifically in this, but for the golfers in particular, it's like, I am being rewarded for my faith. I'm being given millions and millions and millions, versus the other people in the field. I am being chosen here, which seems nonsensical. But that's not the whole point of religion. Certainly it's not the point of the original message of Christianity, which is love thy neighbour.
I know, but what about the psychology?
Love thy neighbour would take all the money from the golfers.
Yeah, no, I get that. But what about the psychological element of all of this? Isn't it like that makes as little sense as many other things in sport? The idea of how psychology actually works and what actually motivates you, what actually is keeping you on an even keel when you know that you are a few strokes clear and about to wear that green jacket, or you know that you're about to get the head popped off you by one of the greatest female boxers of all time. And I find that psychological element of it so fascinating, and I find the arc of the importance of the religion in Katie even more interesting, because that for me suggests that there's been a different thought process when it comes to the importance of religion in her preparation for sport, not just in her life, but in her preparation for sport. This is a centerpiece of it.
Just on that quickly, one, I think this is it's an interesting chat to have. I think that's why it's so interesting to have this footage, kind of fully understand that mindset. And I completely appreciate everything you're saying, Ger, but also that's kind of part of why I wanted to highlight that clip, is because I think it's interesting, and even just kind of looking at it a bit more coldly, just understanding that psychological state of mind and kind of the impact it can have. Then just on the sort of broader thing, I did a quick kind of Google just when I was doing a bit of a dive into this yesterday, and she's very vocal on sort of the whole about her fate, and there were kind of some older comments or stuff like, oh, you can we're open to everything apart from God these days, that type of stuff. But more recently, she doesn't seem to be very outspoken on social issues, so I don't know if it is kind of a case that her fate is more kind of, she wants to keep it more of a private in a way thing, as opposed to I'm telling people what I believe, I'm not trying to push it on other people. It's interesting saying she's speaking about it less, but there was, we probably don't have time to play it, but there was a more recent clip from The Zone in kind of the build up to one of her recent fights on YouTube, where she's talking again, kind of, it's like talking very vividly about kind of the specific pieces of scripture about kind of being a kind of soldier of God and him sort of guiding you type of stuff. That's not a direct quote, and I don't want to do the quote misjustice, but that's kind of like the underlying message. Is that more kind of militant, kind of like the angry, or like more
evangelical?
Yeah, exactly.
Like her Twitter profile has her bio rather has pieces of the Bible reference in it, for example. So yeah, that's definitely a big part of who she is and what she believes in. Maybe it's her Instagram bio, because her Twitter bio says, "The Lord is my strength and my shield."
Lee McCourt, when we talked to her, was similar. I do think the link between faith and combat sports is interesting, and we should come back to that at some point as well. Okay, so that's the second episode of this, Joseph. Well done. You're recommending everybody goes and digs that out, basically. Yeah, exactly, and it's up a few places. It's as far as I can see, it's not available kind of free anywhere, but it's $1.99 to watch it on Amazon Prime, so that's probably the handiest place to get it. But yeah, I really recommend, especially this week, especially the second half of it, just kind of going back and sort of rewatching it, knowing what we know now, post Pursuit fights, post Madison Square Garden, with kind of even the Grove Park question hanging over everything, kind of. Definitely, it was very interesting. And also, if you have seen it and don't feel like watching it again, I definitely recommend digging out that interview with Aidan from a couple of years back with Ross Whittaker. That was there's a lot of very interesting stuff in that as well. All right. But, have you seen Katie by Ross Whittaker and Joseph Conroy this week? 20 minutes past 9 here on OTB AM. A reminder brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. We're going to be joined by Manchester City Academy coach Jamie Carr after these. But first, here's Kenny Cunningham on last night Off the Ball talking about how Craig Bellamy used to mercilessly troll opposition defenders on the pitch, including Kenny himself. See you back after this.
Someone has a nibble at you in passive
I wouldn't have maybe ignored him, but wouldn't have got involved. Would have got the opposite, maybe, crack the joke or whatever, like, you know what I mean. But wouldn't have to give that impression, right? He's got under me skin here. I've got him where I want him, type of thing. There was a few of those around. Bellamy was probably probably the worst of them. Constant talk for the. He really. I found him quite funny. He was a lovely player, to be honest. He was a fantastic.
Wasn't
player.
he just?
Oh, he's
a little bit underrated.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Injuries as well, kind of held him back. But it's top. When at his best. Yeah, really good player. But he was constant.
Did you like playing a high line against Bellamy? You did.
Well, the problem in those days, we had keepers wouldn't leave their 6-yard box, let alone their 18-yard box. So if we had a few of the sweeper keepers back then, maybe I'd have been more inclined to keep that high line. But no, it was always a case of maybe if in doubt, drop it. You know, you know what I'm saying, Joe. Let him have it to his feet. That recovering midfielder. I was lucky. Well, playing for Ireland, I was very lucky. The likes of Roy do that job for you, Mark Kinsler and Matt, all of them. All you had to worry about was the ball in behind, anything in front. They'd be kind of ratting off the front. So I got spoiled there a little.
So what's the flavour of Bellamy talk?
No, I wouldn't. I couldn't remember. No, literally, no, it would be the case of how bad are you? How are you earning a living? From this game? We belong those lines.
He wasn't even being rhetorical.
That's the way it was. Even back then, it would have been very. The old. It's cringeful now. I would never got involved. No, how much? Sorry, how much you? It was the big money thing then, wasn't it, back then? But he would have been like, I didn't realise how bad you were. I knew you were bad, but I didn't realise how bad you were. Which I found quite funny. I mean, I'd laugh at that. I'd be like, you're right. I'm worse than you think.
And he'd have a bit of a smile back, I'd say.
He might know, but he might. To be honest with you, he might. But that was his thing. I think he probably used it himself as something he maybe needed to get the best out of himself in some respects. Like, you know what I mean? But it's funny to watch him at this. You'd see plenty of players bite on it and stuff like that.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
The team of OTB are taking on a challenge that requires fitness, a challenge that demands months of training and preparation, a challenge that requires knowing when to push and when to focus on recovery. Triathlons aren't easy, but having a fitness coach helps.
Whoop are helping us non-athletes.
You'll need all the help you can get.
Yeah, as I was saying, helping us non-athletes feel like pros in our challenge to complete a triathlon this summer.
OTB Sports, in partnership with Whoop. Unlock your inner potential with Whoop, the personalised digital fitness and health coach that provides you with actionable feedback on your sleep, training, recovery and health. Check out whoop.com for more.
FBD Insurance knows this sound spells trouble for van drivers. But if you're an existing FBD customer, you'll get 15% off a new van insurance policy. It's how we're keeping you and your van on the road. Visit fbd.ie or contact your local branch. FBD Insurance. Support. It's what we do. Terms and conditions apply. 15% discount available on new commercial motor policies only when an existing FBD farm, business, car or home policy is in place. FBD Insurance Group Limited, trading as FBD Insurance, is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland. Commercial motor insurance is underwritten by FBD Insurance plc.
This is Sport Ireland Campus, and here is where it all starts. From the little ones learning to the high-performance athletes leading. Here we go to play, to practice, to progress. Here is where communities in the nation come together to compete, to win, and to belong. Here we go to the next level, then on to the world stage. This is Sport Ireland Campus, and here we go. Visit sportirelandcampus.ie to be a part of it.
Paddy? I go, what? He goes, Paddy Andrews. I go, yeah. As he goes, this is James' house. He's upstairs. Will I get him?
The Football Pod with Paddy Andrews and James O'Donoghue are bringing the show on the road. The first stop for Ireland's biggest and best GAA pod will be the Royal Theatre in Castlebar on Thursday, June 2nd, as Paddy, James, Tommy and special guests dissect, analyse and celebrate Mayo football, as well as getting stuck into the runners and riders for Championship 2022. Tickets are €20 plus booking fees and are on sale now. See otbsports.com/events for more.
OTB AM
with Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
24 minutes past 9. You're very welcome along to OTB AM. We've been here since 7:30. We've kind of, I think, talked out most of the issues around last night, but there's probably still more to come. If there's anything you'd like to get off your chest, you can use the hashtag OTBAM. If there was away goals, would City have played differently? Asks Michael Kennedy on YouTube.
Possibly, but would they have played differently in the first leg as well, knowing that 3 Real Madrid goals would have been detrimental?
But yeah, it would have been like game over, 3 away goals.
But maybe they would have, because like any goal would have killed off Real Madrid then at that point, or certainly a couple of them.
Here's what's on OTB Sports Radio for you across the day. You can get OTB Sports Radio. I think we assume everybody knows this, but you can actually listen non-stop to our content on a live stream if you just tell your smart speaker to play OTB Sports Radio. You can also get it, of course, on the app, on the OTB Sports app. Just click the button. OTB goal today is at 1 o'clock is Jack McCaffrey. Leaders' questions with Stuart Lancaster's at 3. Our retro panel is when GA meets basketball at 4. OTB Gold is Nigel Mansell at 6, and then the show is live tonight with Nathan and John Giles and all the rest that you would expect on a Thursday. Paddy Andrews' Instagram yesterday had an interesting picture of himself, Stephen Cluxton and
Jack McCaffrey.
But they'd all be, well, certainly Cluxton at the moment would be in the team.
We don't know. Like, I mean,
He would.
But Wexford never tested out the new guy last week, and maybe he is a new Cluxton, and we will be doing nostalgia pieces in 35 years where it's like, remember his first game when he played against Wexford?
Yeah. What's his name?
I don't know. I knew you were going to go there as well. I was like,
it's only because you look so.
I was like, I realized that's what was coming. As soon as I started talking, I was like, I know what you're going to do here. I apologise. That's really bad on my part.
I'm a cruel bastard.
Yeah.
And still, your internet skills are so weak that
I've got also like 1% on my laptop.
Okay, quick. Well, you better use that 1%.
Race against time.
The third choice goalkeeper is.
But I know who it's not. You know.
Not Cluxton, not Comerford.
It's not Shield and it's not Comerford. I know that. I apologise for my ignorance on this.
So the big story overnight was, of course, that Steve Hodge sold his Diego Maradona jersey for 7 million sterling, and whatever the exchange rate is at the moment. But it's the highest price paid ever for a jersey worn by anybody. There was a Babe Ruth jersey that sold for 5 million previously, and obviously American sports memorabilia is just a completely different scale to anything that's ever happened when it comes to sports memorabilia in football, because you would have thought that for whatever reason baseball seems to be the thing that has the most value, and it doesn't ever seem to go down. There's a big market in Japan, and so therefore you've got 2 massive global economies interested in buying it. But the Maradona jersey went for 7 million. They thought it might go for 4 million. I do wonder what Peter Shilton thinks of all this. I'm dying to hear Peter Shilton speak about Steve Hodge getting 7 million quid, his teammate. I mean, the right thing for Steve Hodge to do would be to give everybody in the team a little cut of that, wouldn't it? Divide it 11 ways, or maybe the 2 subs. John Barnes come off the bench. Did somebody else come off the bench? They probably might only have been still 1 sub. So maybe it was 12 of them. Divide it 12 ways. That's the fair thing to do, because they were all out in the pitch. They were all equally humiliated by Maradona on the day.
Wronged by Maradona.
Apparently he did get grief in the past. In fairness, Steve Hodge has been building up to this since that moment. His entire life has been changed. His autobiography was The Maradona Shirt. That was the name of it. Not my amazing career where I played for England in a World Cup, and it was decent. He was a decent midfielder. Played for Villa, played for Spurs. Poor man's Frank Lampard with maybe 1/10 of the goals. Grand. But now he's stinking rich on the back of this.
It's incredible. I mean, the Shilton bitterness around it all, I would say, is at complete odds with someone like Hodge, and I'd say the sense of nostalgia and joy that he's felt down through the years. This little piece of history to sort of, devastated about the moment as it happens in real time and for a couple of days or weeks afterwards. But getting over it, like I guess most sports people do, where Shilton is still carrying this grudge, and now it's time for him to pick up a new grudge, which is, give me my money, please.
Fair play to him for selling the jersey and for taking the money.
Yeah, 100%. Was there some suggestion that there was more than one?
There was a suggestion that he wore 2 in the match, changed at half time, and that the family and the estate have the other one, which, if that was the case, is that the case? Because apparently there was a last minute consortium which included the Maradona Museum that tried to buy this one. So if they had one, why would they try and buy this one too?
Yeah, it's a good point. Also, is this the most money anybody's ever going to make off Diego Maradona? Like, so 7 million quid. Is there any other piece of
boots? The
boots will go for more.
Well, in a pub in Kilcullen called the Hideout, they used to have Dan Donnelly's arms. He was the first ever heavyweight champion, and we would drive past and I would always be a little bit freaked out by the fact, in there, Dan Donnelly's arms. It was a story. And it was true, they had them. I don't know if they were mummified or whatever. So, maybe if there was a grave robber who was to get in and get his left hand, the hand of God, would that make more than 7 million?
Yes, I would suggest it probably would.
Like in Succession,
Diego Maradona.
In Succession, doesn't the dopey son, does he buy something? Somebody's appendage?
Oh yes, I think that's good. Oh yes, he does in the new season. He does. Yeah, that's sort of thing. That's the only thing I could see going for it. So 7 million. Is there anything else from Maradona at that point?
No. OTB AM is brought to you live.
David O'Hanlon, by the way.
By Gillette Labs. Okay, good man, David O'Hanlon, yeah.
It just came to me there.
And where does he play? Who does he play for? What's his club?
He plays in goalkeeper position for Dublin.
OTB AM is brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. And we wish David all the best with his career. In 20 years' time, we'll be talking about his Hall of Fame career. Now, let's move on. I'm delighted to say Jamie Carr is with us. Jamie's been on the show before talking about his exploits as a runner. Little did we know it was going to inspire him to become a rower. Jamie, good morning to you. How are you?
Hey guys, how you doing?
You're a little bit crazy. I'm sorry. I don't normally start interviews by telling people stuff like you're a bit crazy, but you're a bit crazy.
Well, you called me a runner there. That's one thing I'm definitely not.
So this is all for charity, right? We should maybe start with the bit that explains exactly where the craziness comes from. You're raising money for kids' cancer charities, and it's obviously hugely important. You did a series of extreme marathons, but rather than most people would probably at the end of that go, right, that's my bit done. You're like now properly inspired to even take this further.
Yeah, so as this year, as part of my campaign, I'm doing 2 challenges. I've completed the first one, which was the 6 marathons in the Sahara Desert. And now I'm moving on to the next one, which is a solo Atlantic row across the Atlantic Ocean later this year. And like you've already said, it's all in support of Cancer Fund for Children, who are helping children all over Ireland with support for after a cancer diagnosis.
How were you after the 6 marathons in the Sahara physically? What was the condition like?
Well, it was really, really difficult, probably more difficult than I had previously expected. And sort of 2 things really got me. On day 1, I suffered with some variation of heat stroke, which was a bit of a challenge because I'd done quite a lot of training in the heat chamber at Man City where I work. So I didn't expect that. That caught me off guard a little bit. And then the other thing that just absolutely killed me was blisters. My feet got absolutely shredded. So between those 2, that was what the whole mental battle was about that week. And luckily enough, I just about got through it.
How do you manage to keep going when you're suffering from heat stroke and from blisters?
Great question. I think when you've come this far, you've trained for a year. Literally, there's no other option than just to keep going. It's not really a choice you have to make. You just keep going. But yeah, when I know that the money I'm raising is going towards such good causes as well, and I've actually seen directly how this money is being used to help young people. Cancer Fund for Children have actually introduced me to Alex, a young guy who lives around the corner from me in Baldoyle, and he's one of the young people that are benefiting from all the money that I'm raising. And actually, Alex has just been given some great news about he'll be the first person in Ireland receiving treatment for his leukemia at this new treatment. So, yeah, Cancer Fund for Children are helping these people, and and everything I sort of do was going towards that great cause.
And so, in the middle of one of the days, in Just because it wasn't hard enough, you decided to do 2 marathons in the same day. In the middle of that, when your brain isn't working properly, are you thinking about the reasons behind it? Is that something that you can fall back on in those moments?
Yeah, I suppose like you're 65k in, the sun is setting, it's getting dark now, you can't see anything, there's nothing really to take your mind off what you're doing now. That's when you sort of drift into those moments and go back to the reasons why and what you're doing it for. And yeah, you haven't got much else to enjoy at that time when your feet are absolutely killing you. Like you said, you've done 65k and you can only literally see some footsteps in the sand up to 10 metres ahead of you. So yeah, that's when it all gets a little bit crazy.
It's really a great cause, and it's all over Ireland, as you say. They're raising 12 million at the moment for a second therapeutic centre in Cong in County Mayo, and it's called Cancer Fund for Children. So tell us about the second challenge. I believe glutton for punishment is the phrase that's coming to mind, but it is for such a great cause. I can kind of see exactly how you get hooked on it.
Yeah, so the second challenge is a solo Atlantic row across the Atlantic Ocean. I'm doing that as part of the Talisker Whisky Atlantic Challenge, which is essentially a race that happens every year, and sort of 30 or 40 teams leave the Canary Islands and row across to Antigua in the Caribbean. I'm doing it solo, so there's probably only going to be 3 or 4 solos doing it in my year. And it's 3,000 nautical miles, totally self-supported, so you carry everything you need to survive on the boat. And basically you're on your own out there. And they say that more people have been to space and climbed Mount Everest. So it's a fairly extreme challenge. And I have a lot of work to do because I literally took my first rowing strokes about a month ago on Salford Quays and here in Manchester. So I have 6 months now to train, to learn about my boat, to pick up seamanship and stuff like that. Because yeah, I'm starting from scratch.
What if you get seasick?
Good question. A lot of people do get seasick in the first few days, and apparently it's terrible. Apparently it literally wipes you, and it's really, really difficult to get over for the first few days. I've been out training once now for a couple of days, and I never had any seasickness. Okay. I've never had seasickness before, so fingers crossed.
Okay. And in terms of like that actual seamanship, is that easy to acquire those skills quickly? Is it more a physical challenge for this one? Or is it more actually learning how the mechanics of everything should work?
This one is definitely a mental challenge. My first challenge running through the desert was probably more physical because you just need to get through 6 days. This one is up to 60 days, probably at least 2 months. So and you're on your own for the entirety of that. So that's where it becomes a real mental test. And who's ever been alone for that period of time? So who knows how I'm going to react, but that's what I'm preparing for, and that's where I've got to sort of practice and try and put some things in place and coping mechanisms and stuff like that for the tough moments.
Well, what sort of coping mechanisms? Like, how do you get through the solitude, do you think?
Well, just little things like I love audiobooks, I love podcasts, I'll have a couple of close friends that I want to speak to, things like that. I don't want to dig too deep because it's such a big unknown, but it's those things that will bring me back to sort of my normal routines in daily life. So I'll have sat phones and stuff like that, which will be able to help, but there'll be certainly no Wi-Fi or anything like that.
Right, okay. So lots of box sets and of podcasts and recommendations I'm sure will be forthcoming. Jamie, if people do want to support you and help you to raise some money, what's the best way for them to do that?
Well, you can follow my campaign and all the training I'm going through in the lead up to this event on Nothing Ventured campaign on Instagram and Facebook. I have a website called nothingventurecampaign.com as well. So I'd appreciate any support. I'm looking for sponsors in Ireland as well that'd be willing to come on board. So like we said, it's all for a great cause of Cancer Fund for Children. And I really appreciate any support.
Well, listen, we wish you the very best of it. A quick word about Manchester City and the general pall of doom that must hang over you guys at the moment. That was hard to take.
Oh, what a crazy week. Even the first leg was just crazy. In the first leg, I don't know how Real Madrid scored 3 goals. I still can't get my head around that. And then last night, there aren't words really, are there? It's just football is such a crazy game of small margins. I know Pep speaks about that in his press conferences all the time, small margins in those big Champions League games. And you think back to like that Grealish chance and Even the goal that Real Madrid scored, the header was off a deflection. So it's those tiny little bits that make such a difference at the top level.
Yeah, and they're the ones that I think make the off-season so hard to survive. Still, there's a league title right there as well for the team at the moment, so no doubt they'll refocus pretty quickly.
Yeah, I'd imagine so. That's the big one. Newcastle on the weekend is just another final for them. 3 games to go, right? So, win all 3 and you win the league.
Yeah, I mean, as simple as that is, and as simple as that sounds, that is the truth. And if they end the season with a champion or with a league title, it's never a bad season. Jamie, we wish you the very best. Congratulations on what you've done so far, and it is all for a really good cause. So, thanks very much for joining us this morning. Cheers.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks a million for having me on.
It's Jamie Carr. He's an academy coach at Manchester City, and obviously raising loads of money for the Cancer Fund for Children. If you want to get in touch with us, we'd love to hear from you. 087 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. You can follow Off the Ball across all our social platforms. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and download the OTB Sports app to enjoy the latest and best in sports content and analysis. Owen and Adrian back from 7:30 tomorrow. As usual on Friday, they'll be enjoying a bit of a Cork loving with Breach Stack and Ronan O'Gara, along with our GA quick picks, the crappy quiz, and much more. Right now, here's Kenny Cunningham reacting in the aftermath of Man City's crumbling last night alongside Joe. Enjoy.
Still here, we're pushing on 11 o'clock. Kenny Cunningham wouldn't let us go. He said, we're staying, we're seeing what happens, and we're coming on here and we're talking about it. And we should have known what was going to happen. Real Madrid are a caricature of themselves. This is beyond my comprehension. They make no sense. They have been dead in this competition several times over. 91st minute, and they get back into it, and they get to extra time. And 95th minute, Benzema scores the penalty. They're through to a Champions League final. I mean, I know they're not plucky underdogs. They're all amazing players. But there's something odd about this run that they're on. What do we say about tonight?
Yeah, I think you can overthink it, to be honest with you. I see it in quite simple terms. I think in Man City, I thought overall it was a reasonably poor quality game. But City got themselves into such a strong position at 1-0 with opportunities to go 2-0 up and finish the tie. There was a couple of chances for Jack Grealish. But you never sensed potentially there was a goal coming from Real Madrid. And she made the substitutions that he had to. You could argue they kept fighting, they kept pushing. Of course you're going to do. It's almost in desperation at that stage from a Real Madrid point of view. But basically when it comes down to this for me. Manchester City's inability to defend 2 or 3 crosses into their box. That's basically what's cost them. It's as simple as that. And again, difficult to point the finger at weaknesses this Manchester City team. But over the 2 legs for me, I look at the 2 goals tonight. Rodrigo getting away from the 2 Manchester City centre halves for his 2 goals. Ruben Diaz, player of the season last year, making a big mistake in relation to the Benzema penalty. You know, not having enough composure to realise that even if Benzema gets to that ball first, his touch is only going to take him away from goal. So rather than take the risk of going to ground as he did, stay in your feet, allow him to have the touch. There's no way he can score from that situation. So again, poor decision from the Manchester City centre half has cost him the 3rd goal. Think of the first leg, Laporte, stray arm in the box, mad stuff, giving away the penalty. Why Laporte never gets across to go and engage Vinicius when he's breaking into the box. So for me, you can overcomplicate it. We talk about it in terms of character and tactically what went wrong. But fundamentally, City from a defensive point of view really lapsed at certain moments over the 2 legs, and the 2 centre halves in particular I think have cost them. That might seem a little bit harsh, but that's how I saw tonight, particularly in relation to those 2 first opening Real Madrid goals, 2 crosses into the box. Benzema just helping it back into the 6-yard box, just helping it into an area. You're expecting your right-sided centre half to step across there, at the very least get the contact with Rodrigo. Doesn't do it. Simple tap in, and then cross from Carvajal into the box. You're thinking, who's going to outjump the 2 Manchester City centre half? Surely nobody, and it's Rodrigo getting up early above Diaz and burying the ball into the back of the net. So back always, even at my small level I play the game, even when I was looking at an international level to play the bigger games and big moments, it always struck me afterwards looking back, do you know what? It's the basics, the fundament. If I'd have done the fundamentals out there, that would have been enough to get us over the line. Didn't have to be anything extraordinary in the moment, just the very basics. And at key moments of that game tonight, late on in the game, from a defensive point of view, Manchester City weren't able to do it.
As an aside, seeing as you mentioned the Laporte decision to run back to goal as opposed to cut off Vinicius for one of these crucial goals, because every goal is now crucial. Is that now the modern thought? Is that modern coaching? Because in your day, I suspect you would have tried to cut off Vinicius, not least with Zinchenko behind you.
Yeah, I think you're right. In general terms, we've seen a lot of that the last half a dozen of years. Players clearly being coached centre halves to defend the central area of the pitch. And then it's other people's responsibility, holding midfielders, to drop into that area of the pitch and fill the space. But I just think the first leg at the Etihad, that was just poor decision making. Nobody was recovering into that area of the pitch. Laporte was the only one who could potentially get across and get into contact with Vinicius. He didn't do it. So for me, poor decision making from him. And him and Diaz then tonight as a pair, when their team really needed it. And those two centre halves, when they're penned in for the last few minutes, Real Madrid are putting balls into the box. Everybody, you're looking to your two centre halves then. Your centre midfielders, forward players are looking back to your defensive line there and saying, you got to step up now. You got to win that forced header into the box. Even if the ball's held back in Benzema style, you got to be anticipating the next one. Anticipate it, get across, clear that one into the stands. Just do the basics, and that sees us through.
2 goals cleared, this wasn't top of mind for sure when it comes to City. But when you think about tonight as a whole, they managed to really dominate on the ball in the first leg. Whereas tonight, they never put patterns together, not with the fluidity and not with the ease. They were always, like in a way that you'd never see City. They were always struggling to kind of keep possession and keep it moving. And I don't know, is that more Madrid or more just City went at it tonight? But something went awry with City on the ball tonight in a way we're not used to seeing.
Yeah, they were always, I think they were searching, probably the best word for the majority of that game, to find that kind of fluidity that you were taught, rhythm. That real rhythm to their play, which we're used to seeing. Even sometimes when they have the ball, they're not particularly going anywhere with it, and they frustrate me a little bit in terms of sideways, backwards, but they pass it quickly, but a bit of tempo.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They're actually dominating the ball. They're kind of dictating to a certain extent. Never got into that space this evening. They were always like searching a little bit for that kind of ascendancy in possession of the ball. I wouldn't say it was due to Real Madrid being particularly tenacious out possession, Joe. To be honest with you, I think you'd make that argument both sides. I mean, Madrid are a possession-based team as well, but no team could really grab the game by the scruff of the neck. I think that was due to the lack of good quality in possession from both teams, which wasn't usual. But even still, City put themselves into a great position. Wonderful goal from Mahrez, and that should have been enough. You didn't sense there was a goal coming. I might have said Grealish missed that chance. You might correct me. It doesn't really matter. I think it's out. I can't see it. There was no sense of Madrid had a way back into that game, but just moments, just small detail. Again, you know, when they put those balls into the box and they asked Manchester City, go on, you got to defend your box now for 3 minutes. Defend your box for 3 minutes, you're going to a Champions League final. They weren't able to do it.
I should tell you that Kenny was calling for another Panenka. He felt that was the clever move. There's no way he'll do it twice, surely.
He went early to his right, didn't he?
Very early.
He went early to his right.
Panenka would have worked.
Well, I think the argument was extraordinary the first time, but the argument was stronger for me because, you know, in Edison's head, there's no way. No, in a million, there's no way he's the. But then, of course, it was no surprise. And give him credit, Benzema, considering he'd missed 3 before that game at the Etihad.
I know you've mentioned it. We don't need to just say it again. And yet I just want to say it again. Why Diaz jumps in when the touch is away from goal is so hard to fathom. It's so hard to fathom.
No, I can understand it. We've all been there. I've done it myself. But generally, it's when you're younger, you learn, and you know what I mean. You make those mistakes. You get to a point in your career, and Diaz is probably there at the moment. Huge experience now. He's been around long enough to know. You've got to be sure. You've got to assess the situation. If Benzema's touch there is taking him towards the goal, to a 1v1 situation with the keeper, you've got to take the risk. But his angle of approach to the ball, you know that touch is only going to take him away from goal. It's almost impossible for him to get a shot in with his next touch, and he's got to see that. You got to keep your mind clear, and that's what I'm saying. The best defenders always, for me, are the best decision maker. In those situations, they make the best decision. Don't make a tackle, make a tackle. Follow the man in, drop off into the space. Anticipation, those type of things. We didn't see that, particularly from the 2 Manchester City centre halves when it was needed.
Substitutions tonight. Let me just throw all these at you and we'll try and make sense of this game. So, here's what Carlo did. He threw on Rodrigo for Toni Kroos on 68 minutes. This was in a bid to chase the game. I remember looking at this sympathetically going, well, I guess you got to do what you got to do. Took off Modric, which was interesting. We were saying, geez, the outside of the boot pass, and do you keep him on? Maybe he was tiring. So Asensio came in for Modric. Camavinga came on in 75 minutes. Had an impact. Then Benzema went off after his goal, 105 minutes. I guess he was just wrecked. Ceballos came on, Vasquez came on, and Vinicius went off with 5 minutes to go. The Man City substitutions. Kyle Walker was injured coming into the game, no surprise. He played 72 minutes. Gundogan came on. Kevin De Bruyne, we'll come back to him, off on 72 minutes. Zinchenko came on. Jack Grealish got in a lot of ball. He came on in 78 minutes. Fernandinho came on 85. And then on the 100th minute mark, Sterling came on for Rodri when City had to really chase it. What about De Bruyne then?
De Bruyne is a standout one, but easily in hindsight, Joe, isn't it? At that point, they're are they 1-0 up? At that point when De Bruyne came on?
72 minutes. So at
Mahrez just got the goal.
At that stage, Mahrez, do you know what? De Bruyne went off the minute before Mahrez scored. The minute before Mahrez scored.
But these are massive decisions. Absolutely. At the time, you can. We weren't jumping up and down. Oof, De Bruyne is coming off, because, like you're saying, in a comfortable position in the toys, still a goal up. But they're still, I think, as a manager, you've almost got to be anticipating almost worst case scenario. If they score, the toys level, we're probably going to need another goal. What players do I need on the pitch?
Regardless of the scores, De Bruyne not supposedly the heartbeat of your team. Like
yeah, but he wasn't tonight. He wasn't the heartbeat of the team tonight.
It was a bad night for him, wasn't it?
Yeah, you have to factor. It's too easy to say, "Oh, Kevin De Bruyne, what's he doing taking off?" You have to factor in the impact he was having on the game tonight. Physically, was there something there? The manager, we don't really know.
See, we'd interpret him being out at the weekend as him being rested at the weekend. Looking at it tonight, you wonder if he's carrying something, because he was so far off it physically.
There might be a little bit of that. So I wouldn't be overly critical of Guardiola in that respect. And De Bruyne is a key player.
Yeah.
We know that. And it wasn't as if they were 2 or 3-0 up. I hadn't scored the goal. Mahrez, as soon as the goal is scored at 2-0, you know what? I can understand it then a little bit in terms of maybe. I don't think it was a huge. Sterling coming on for different, Gundogan coming on. I don't think really changes the dynamic.
Legs,
yeah, exactly. Probably the De Bruyne is the one, but I think the fact obviously he couldn't really get into the game and impact the game probably made the decision a little bit easier for Guardiola. But I wouldn't be overly critical of the substitutions. Now Madrid were just chasing the game. There was just like
it's a bad night for De Bruyne. He's had criticism actually, even in Spain, as somebody who hasn't quite done it in the big games and the very big nights at European level or international level. And I even heard Gary Neville talking last week when De Bruyne was rested, and he was saying this is kind of a defining night for De Bruyne. This is a big night at the Bernabeu. You're the talisman. This is the night to really create the goal or score the goal, and just hasn't happened for him. He's still an amazing player, so I'm not even sure what my point is, but it's a disappointing night for him.
So my point about De Bruyne, I think there was a period a couple of years ago where Kevin De Bruyne didn't play. There was a massive drop off in terms of performance. It was a case of De Bruyne is not in the starting 11.
Yeah,
a little bit of worry, a bit of apprehension crept in. Now he was out of the Manchester City team for a couple of months at the start of this season, Kevin De Bruyne, and they didn't skip a beat. Manchester City, they went on that run without him in the team and really drove themselves to the top of the table. I go so far as to say wouldn't go so far as to say he wasn't missed. Are they a better team with him playing at his best? Yeah, absolutely. But I don't think Manchester City at this moment are as dependent on Kevin De Bruyne as they were a couple of years ago. I think Foden is the heir apparent there, really, in terms of the position which he holds. I think Foden will slide into that position eventually. Kevin De Bruyne is still an outstanding player. I think it's a fair argument in terms of not turning up for the big games. Ultimately, that's something he's just going to have to suck up, as Guardiola will, off the back of this result tonight. Never really does it the latter stages of the Champions League, tactically, the whole, whatever it is, can't get over the line. That's something which he's going to have to do. And maybe De Bruyne might end his career and there'll be a little bit of that criticism, but you can't criticise him in terms of his quality. He's an outstanding footballer. But I feel as if he's probably, maybe over the next year or so, he might be coming to that point where he's just on the way down ever so slightly. Maybe Jordan Henderson style. And I just don't feel as if Manchester City are as dependent on him. I think that was proved first half of the season. You know what I mean? Where they were pretty exemplary when they went on that run, took him to the top of the league, Christmas, New Year. There was no talk of De Bruyne. Or where's De Bruyne? We're really missing him. So at his best, yeah, absolutely. I think he can do things still other players in that Manchester City team can't do. But to do it on a regular basis with the injuries that he sustained, he has had quite a few injuries. And again, in a big game this evening. Now you could say the first game
he was great in the first game.
Well, exactly. I wouldn't particularly buy into that. Somebody can impact the game at the very highest level. He freezes or whatever. I wouldn't quite buy into that. But I think there will come a time, and it mightn't be too far down there. I don't think it's necessarily 3 or 4 years down the road, when maybe we're going to see maybe De Bruyne play less of a pivotal role in that City team.
I love him, and so I don't quite buy into that he can't do it at a certain level either. I think he's top level, but it's an unfortunate happenstance that he doesn't have enough of these big nights in his career that you can point to and go, well, he did it that time and he scored that goal and he did that. To what extent is tonight now another mark against Guardiola in this competition? There are certain nights we can point to where he's made odd decisions, which were very obviously, oh, Pep, that's a bad night for you in Europe. Tonight, certainly in team selection, you can't say is in that vicinity. So where do we put, what box do we put this into on Pep? And
it's because you're right, absolutely right. There's been in this situation, Champions League at this stage with Guardiola before, even last season, Champions League final, Gundogan playing that holding midfield position. I'm like, ooh.
Leon the year before. There was the night Bayern against, funny enough, Real Madrid and Ancelotti, where he came out and said, God, I made the worst decision ever. I went to a 4-2-3-1 and I've done all season.
The Monaco game as well, Joe, when the goals conceded home and away there was like way open, you know what I mean, and things like that. But in terms of the setup of the team over the two legs, no, I couldn't argue with it. It's the things you can see that are not obvious to the eye for me. So we talk about Ancelotti, that kind of man management style. How does it have an effect? Did that kind of have an effect at that stage in the game late on for Real Madrid in extra time? You know, when he stepped onto the pitch, when he spoke to the players, when he asked for a little bit more from them, how he kind of carries himself, you know, not just on the night, but generally speaking in the lead up to the game. Does that have an effect on the players in those key moments? They gain a little bit of confidence from that and keep pushing. I mean, I wouldn't say Manchester City gave up in that last 30 minutes, but they lost a little bit of heart.
They're gone,
I thought lost a little bit of spirit, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now, Madrid didn't do that, to be fair to them. I wouldn't say they were banging on the door the last 50 minutes of normal time, but they were still pushing, you know what I mean? There was still a little bit of belief there. You know, collectively, there was still that kind of like, you know, there's a chance here for us. So you could make the spurious argument, some people might say, that to a certain extent that maybe that comes from the manager, you know, how he carries himself, you know, around the place in the lead up to the game, during the dressing room. We don't know, we're not privy to that, Joe, exactly. Like, you know, we saw Guardiola being very vocal there, you know, at the end of normal time, extra time, you know, how much of that the players absorb, where they really kind of, you know, they really take on board what he's saying, where they lifted by what he had to say.
Yeah.
You know, we don't know. They're the intangibles a little bit, aren't they?
Well, if this was on him, it's far less obviously from our perspective on him than the previous ones where it was very apparent. Just the last one, Jack Grealish for the final, I guess, half hour of this game, whenever he came off the bench, which was in the 78th minute. He was kind of a big presence out there. He was catching the eye. He obviously had the chance which Mendy cleared off the line. It certainly felt in extra time like he was maybe one of the few players that could go by someone and unlock a very crowded area. And yet it probably didn't quite happen for him either.
Yeah, could have done. Had that great chance, didn't he? Kicked off the line. Obviously, one.
Mendy got that one.
Yeah, wide of the post. So that conversation will continue to go on. I think there is we're talking about like Liverpool, Man City going forward, how they can improve. Haaland coming in.
Yeah.
But there's another area of the pitch for me where maybe a bit like Liverpool, I'm saying loads of very good midfielders, but could they sacrifice one of them and get a top quality central midfielder? Liverpool. I'd probably say the same. Manchester City at centre half for me. Laporte for me has been a disappointment now the last maybe 18 months. We're seeing the first Rodrigo goal here. That's like a hopeful cross into the box. Cancelo, is that Cancelo at right back?
Yeah.
Not doing enough. So Cancelo for me, brilliant in terms of attacking full-back. But when it comes to a defender, have a look at him here, Joe, and the ball's clipped in. This is the second goal. But the first goal, when Camavinga clips that ball to the back post, he's the closest defender to Benzema, right back.
Yeah.
Now, he should be driving towards Benzema there, trying to get a tackle, get as close to him or block that cushion cross back into the goal. Show a real desire to get there, you know, in terms of this is potentially a dangerous situation. I'm going to do everything I can, block, put my body on the line, put him off, put my hand in his face, stick my fingers out, anything I have to do to put this fella off, getting his peripheral vision. Have a look at him recover there. He's sauntering back. Yeah. Doesn't take that real pride in his defending as he does in his attacking. And that's a small thing. You wouldn't look at that goal and think it wasn't Cancelo's fault. But those things really matter.
This level.
But I'm saying centre half, Laporte for me, last 18 months, not good enough.
Okay.
For me. Now, Stones, you could argue Stones coming in there. I think he is the better all-round player. But for me, if money's to be spent, if I'm looking at Manchester City team saying, where can you improve? For me, Laporte out and go and spend money again and get another top-class centre-half in. If they do that and Haaland coming in next season, I still think they're in pretty good shape going forward.
We have weeks yet to preview a Champions League final, so we'll let you hold your powder dry on that one. As for what this means for the Premier League and for Man City and their ability now to regroup for things like Wolves away, when in some respects, especially Pep, will feel like the wind has gone out of their sails, the air's gone out of this tyre. This season is now like, another league, great, 3 in a row, great, but it won't be what it should be. This gives Liverpool a big advantage, or a bigger advantage maybe is the better way.
Yeah, I think this hurts. We spoke about this before, didn't we? How would it affect
But they go off a
Manchester
cliff
City?
energy-wise kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think in terms of picking yourself, I haven't had experience of this, but we've all been around the game long enough to get a sense of absolute devastation in that Manchester City dressing room. I'm sure the lads after the game, they were looking at them now on the side of the pitch, only let's go. Guardiola will pick his players up now. The players will be determined to go, and that's the hope. But that's not a given. That's not easy to pick yourself. Yeah, you'll pick yourself up to an extent, but to kind of park all that kind of disappointment to the side, refocus and get your level up where it needs to be for every game between now and the end of the season, that's not going to be easy. No. And I don't think they're going to be able to do it, Manchester City. Now, where they're going to drop points, we'll wait and see. But for me, this result hurts them in terms of their title challenge, and it actually buoys Liverpool maybe to a smaller extent as well. So that's the challenge facing this Manchester City team now, with some difficult away fixtures to come. That kind of bit of character and all the cliches, and it's really going to have to come to the fore between now and the end of the season if they're going to hold off that Liverpool challenge.
A lot of people need to go home. It's your fault we're still here after 11 o'clock.
You're locked out. No way you're I hope the suitcase isn't going to be on the pavement, is it? Surely not.
10. You said 10:30. So I got to go. Everyone's got to go. Our football show coverage is brought to you by Sky. You can watch big games from the Women's Super League live on Sky Sports. So thank you to all the team for staying late. Thank you to me for staying late. Thank you to Kenny for making us stay late.
Pleasure.
We will see you again soon. Bye-bye.
OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor. With